Hello.
Hey, I'm here. I'm not quite here, but I'm here. I still want to get my coffee.
Oh, okay. So I'll tune you out. Well, let me know.
No, I'm here.
Actually,
Yeah, let me go grab my coffee and then I'll be back. Oh, that paper
all right.
there. I did a medium
Yeah.
version of it, so it's a little more casual. I'll be right back, Charmy.
All right.
Well, not those words, but that's what I heard. Okay. I was telling you, look, that you were gonna tell me all the things that were wrong with my paper.
No. Well,
Mm,
mine. Well, no, I'm not going to make any comment just yet, other than
okay,
there's a lot of big words.
let me pull it up just to share it
Oh,
with you.
okay.
Um, that because with the trying to be able to have it pull up in a chat GPT, and it's not finding my papers on Vixra. And the reason that is because I don't use the meaning of life, and Joanie Carter is just way too popular. So I don't use that term in the papers I publish over there. So it was pulling all of the information from the medium. So what I did was I just took those papers and I just turned them into a blog post version, a medium article style version. Okay, I'm putting in the link to that last. So that was my attempt to get the algorithm to take not just the kind of open thought discussion papers, but be able to pull in the information that's published elsewhere that is more on a scientific level, like the one you're talking about now. I've only gotten 2 published over there. And so,
Can you?
at this point, I'm not even sure I might bother anymore because I might just leave it at this and just keep posting on Medium where I have the freedom to really, be a little more
You know,
casual. Look,
do you have a link for it?
I did. I put it in the private chat there.
Okay. Let's. Oh, I see. Okay. Oh,
I need
all
to
right.
change.
So I'm going to
Yeah,
open that up. Is it the same? Yeah, it's the same subject, right?
it is.
Yeah, it's the
It's the
same
same.
article.
It's the same article. Um,
Okay.
let's see.
Is the
I need to
text
change it.
different?
Huh?
Is the text different?
No, well, yeah, no. Well, here's what I did. So I took the PDF from Vixra, the paper you have there, and I asked the chat GPT to help soften it so that it would be more readable for Medium. And then I went through and edited out things I didn't like. So it presents all the information, but in a more casual tone as opposed to the strict, scholarly form.
Okay. Do you want to try that?
Oh, I don't care which one. I'm just telling you, I just did that this week. I did that
All right.
on Wednesday, I think. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start with that. So from Medium.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's.
And Medium is like, a blog post site that people
There we
they
go.
can post anything on any topic. So I've been posting over there for a year, maybe, or since the summer, I think 6 months. Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we try that?
Okay.
All right.
It'll read
Human
smoother.
history.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm.
Human
Oh, you are
history
live
in
right
order.
now? Okay. I'm so
Oh,
sorry. I
sorry.
messed up your whole thing. Okay, I'll be so quiet now.
That's sorry. I thought, all right. Human history in order. A developmental interpretation of early material engagement by Joanie Rotten. We often describe early human behavior as primitive, inefficient, or pre-symbolic, but the archaeological record keeps ruining that neat little insult. Early tool making and material engagement were systematic, skilled, and remarkably stable across vast spans of time. That tension matters because it forces a real question. What if early human behavior reflects a necessary developmental sequence rather than a cognitive deficit? This is not a recycled version of 19th. Oh, wait a minute. There we go. This is not a recycled version of 19th century recapitulation theories that tried to infantilize early human populations and were later used to justify colonial hierarchies. This framework stays narrowly focused on material neuroengagement. It does not argue that early humans were childlike in intelligence, culture, or social capacity. Instead, it argues something simpler and stricter. The mechanics of learning impose a universal order on skill acquisition. The same sensor-motor constraints that shape how a modern infant learns to control objects also shape how an ancestral adult learns to engage materials. The scale differs, the nervous system sequence does not. The key window, 3 to 6 months. Sensory motor consolidation. In developmental psychology, the period between roughly 3 and 6 months marks a critical transition in the human nervous system. The shift from reflex dominated behavior to voluntary rhythmic action. Building on Jean Piaget, 1952, this stage is not defined by exploration of space, like dropping or throwing. It's defined by the consolidation of impact and feedback. In plain terms, the nervous system is learning, pardon. In plain terms, the nervous system is learning what happens when the body strikes the world. This shows up through a tight cluster of behaviors. The grasp strike loop, a transition from reflexive grasping to purposeful holding and striking. Percussive action, repetitive banging of objects against surfaces to generate sound and sensation. Rhythmic stereotypies. What in the world? I don't know that. Was typies? Rhythmic stereotypes or typies. I don't know. Sorry. Rhythmic stereotypies. Rhythmic kicking, bouncing, and arm waving that regulate arousal and coordinate the limbs. Auditory feedback reliance, a strong attraction to actions that produce immediate sound. A crucial detail here is that infants in this phase have not yet mastered intentional release. Their primary mode of engagement is holding and impacting, and mastery appears rapidly, not through abstraction or instruction, but through repetition of physical force and sensory feedback. Archaeology's version, percussion before planning. Now zoom out and look at the earliest material traditions in the archaeological record. A consistent pattern appears. Early human material engagement is dominated by percussion and repetition. The earliest stone tools emerge from repeated striking rather than abstract carving or molding. Experimental archaeologist Nicholas Toth from 1985 demonstrated that novice knappers initially produce flakes incidentally through forceful percussion. Intentional shaping and precision appear only after prolonged interaction with fracture mechanics. Lithic analyst, lithic analyst William Andrewski from 1998 notes that early tool traditions emphasize reliable force application over efficiency or standardized form. Once outcomes or stabilize, tool forms persist with minimal modification for millennia. From a cognitive perspective, Lambros Malafouris from 2013 argues that cognition is not confined to the brain, but emerges through material engagement. Neuroarchaeological work by Dietrich Stout from 2008 supports this. Early toolmaking recruits sensorimotor and auditory regions, with executive planning regions engaged only at later stages of consolidation. Taken together, these findings describe a learning process dominated by repetition, rhythm, and direct feedback, which, which matches the behavioral profile observed in the 3 to 6 month infant. Rhythm isn't art first, it's regulation. Infants respond to rhythm before language, intention, or symbolic meaning. Rhythmic sound reliably recruits coordinated movement even before balance or posture is established. This response is automatic and regulatory, not expressive. Early human behavior shows the same features: rhythmic pounding and grinding, repetitive tool actions, auditory feedback guiding force and timing, and group synchronization during labor. Rhythm stabilizes repetition, reduces cognitive load, and extends endurance. In both infancy and early human contexts, rhythm functions as neural regulation, not communication. Early metals and the limits of impact. This developmental lens also clarifies why early metallurgy looks the way it does. The earliest human interactions with metal are restricted to materials that respond predictably to impact alone, mirroring the grasp-strike cognition of the infant stage. This native metallurgy phase includes gold, which is native, extremely malleable and ornamental; copper, native in some regions, malleable and used for tools; meteoric iron, metallic but brittle when cold worked. Then comes a boundary that looks less like we weren't smart enough and more like we weren't there yet, in sequence terms. The absence of alloys such as bronze marks a developmental boundary. Bronze requires controlled smelting, precise temperature regulation, and abstract combination of materials. Its absence is likely not a failure of intelligence, but a constraint of sequence. Mastery of direct impact must precede transformation. An important nuance here is annealing. Through action and feedback rather than theory, early metalworkers discovered that heating hammered copper restored its malleability. This represents sensor-motor learning rather than abstract chemistry. A sequence, not a hierarchy. This framework does not rank societies or imply linear superiority. It proposes that both individual development and collective history follow non-negotiable neurological sequences. Across early infancy, approximately 3 to 6 months behaviorally, and early human history, the same order appears: control before intention, rhythm before meaning, repetition before rules, and mastery before abstraction. Long archaeological plateaus may therefore represent consolidation phases rather than stagnation. Implications in future directions. This developmental lens suggests several avenues for further research, including the relationship between containment schemas and early pottery, the role of rhythmic social scaffolding in tool-making communities, reinterpretation of technological stasis as developmental constraint. Conclusion. The most immediate evidence for understanding early human behavior may be the one most often overlooked: the human developmental sequence itself. Human history does not begin with abstract ideas. It begins with bodies learning what the world will do when acted upon. Early humanity is not primitive. It's infantile in mechanism, foundational, regulated, and dependent on direct feedback. And like the human nervous system, it develops in a strict, non-negotiable order. References: Andreevsky from 1998, Malafouras from 2013, Piaget from 1952, Stout and Chabanade from 2007, Stout from 2008, Toth from 1985. Oh, original. Oh, yeah, that's the original. The original
Who wrote that?
source
That is
document.
so good. That is amazing. Who came up with that idea? That's brilliant. I
I,
really loved seeing that. I really loved listening to you read that. That sounds so pretty in my
I'm
brain.
glad.
Like, that really makes sense. Of course, that's what's happening.
I find too many big words for my little
That's very
brain.
doable. I can work on that. I can dumb it, not dumb it down, but you know what I'm saying. I can work
Well,
on rewording it so that it's a little bit more storytelling-esque, or I don't like that term, but more conversational. That would be the adjective I'm lurking for. Lurking for? Sure.
yeah, like doesn't require dictionary sort of talk.
Yeah, fair enough. But that was should have been a lot easier to comprehend than say the paper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's, I don't know,
And
there's a couple of
it
words
makes
that I
sense.
didn't know.
Okay. Well, I think too,
Where
some
was,
of it's just, the stereotypies. It's the plural for stereotype. So what he's
is it?
saying,
I didn't
yes.
know that.
So what we're saying there is that in rhythms, there's lots of different types of rhythm, from the kicking, the bouncing, the arm waving. So if you ever seen a baby in like a bouncy seat, and they just start kicking their
Mhm.
arms or kicking their legs, or they wave their arms and the seat will start moving for them, and you see them doing these funny videos on TikTok where the babies are making the bouncy seat like they've learned how to swing before they had to swing. The idea of pumping their arms can make the seat go up and down, or kicking their legs can make it bounce. That's a chop at that stage in development. They're learning what their body can do to their environment. They don't understand that kicking is making them bounce. They just know that if I kick, I bounce. And I get this sensation. They don't even know they're bouncing. I just get this sensation. Now, these kind of sensations in the human body when they're little like that is building that core where we have a sense of self and place and time, your proprioception and your balance control. And, so it's all working from inward outward. And that's where you get to the hitting of the rocks or the banging of the fists. Because now I'm not just creating in the air the bouncing sensation, but I can feel that sensation when the object strikes another object. So waving my hands in the air gives me one type of rhythmic stereotype, but then using my fist to bang down gives me another type. And then you see that in history. And if you look at the flinting, that's discovered. I didn't even know. I have to tell you, I've learned so many interesting things working on these projects, because I did not know that archaeology has the people completely devoted to the behaviors, not just the stuff, but why they did what they did with the stuff. And they go and get degrees and stuff for this. I mean, this is like a real huge Harvard course you can take. I didn't realize that it's called, behavioral archaeology, I think. And I was like, man, that would have been a rad job for me. I could have really loved doing that. I didn't even know something existed like that when I was a teenager. I'd have been like, this might be fun. But anyway, so we learned through those how the brain processes cutting flint. So in that study, they're not going back and just studying the flint. They brought a group of people like you and I together, and then they gave them what's necessary, 2 rocks to bang together to make the flakes, and let them go. No instruction, just bang them together. So what the study is showing is that in the beginning, all of the flakes that come off are mistakes. They flake off like a perfect blade. They all by themselves. And the more the person practiced on their own without any instruction whatsoever can eventually create in a certain window. So they were what we saw is like arrowheads and points. So what this paper was showing is that the humans could have made these things so simply just because they're sitting there and playing with it. And that's why I used it in the paper, because it is just a banging quality that created something that led to the unopening of the mind, that I can manipulate that creation and use it. And so that's where we get some of the first, not weapons, tools for hunting. I'm sure they were used as weapons, but that was not the intent. People were not fighting each other in that way back then. They would have rolled around in the dirt with their fists. So original tools were for, hunting, gathering. And all of that makes sense because it's all tactile. Rope weaving and braiding and things like that the women participated in, and beading, and then scratchings into rocks and things like that, and etchings and handprints on walls and that kind. It's all tactile. It's all very tactile, and it fits that developmental window of the first stage there of the newborn and infant, or newborn and infant stage, our fear of annihilation. Conquering annihilation, knowing where my body begins and where my body ends, and how I interact with my environment can prevent me from dying. And now I have conquered the fear of annihilation. And I think that is the most beautiful thing ever. And I'm kind of excited I thought of it. But I would love it even if I hadn't. It makes the most sense to me. So I'll shut up now. I do want to hear what you say.
Well, see, my thoughts are kind of objectionable, or like, see, I don't trust archaeology, like academic archaeology. In my biased opinion, is the is science fiction, and what the academics are doing is that they're scamming us in the context of science. So they're
Okay.
actually writing science fiction novels and passing it off to us as research science theories, etc. But they're just conning us. We're paying Hollywood script writers to write scripts for books and television or whatever. Instead of calling it fiction, we call it nonfiction. And that's the scam. Now, not to say that there isn't any value to it, but they're in the business of making stuff up and passing it off as
Okay.
alternative stories, like alternative history. Now, now that's my bias. Like I start off with that before um, digging any deeper into any
That is
particular sort of field
so
of research.
That's very fair. I have the
Now,
same approach. And here's just to answer that question from my perspective, because I absolutely agree with you. So when I started looking at what archaeological evidence we do have, what everything they pull out, right? All the woohoo along with what's there. And then I'll look through it, and then I look at it through the meaning of life. And then I look for the patterns. So when I see something that equals the behavior of a baby at that time, something that's easily explained, like this idea that some of our first things would be little chips of rocks doesn't take us as scientists to even consider. We could decide, yeah, definitely you could use a rock. And she knows. So we're looking at human development behavior and what do humans do, and then there I can go back into evidence that archaeology does supply, and I can find what I would go, okay, that particular thing fits because the behavior fits. And if I see something there that does not fit the behavior, like I do believe I found several things that I can easily explain why it shows up there and how we've been misinterpreting it because we're looking at it from an adult and we're not looking at it through the eyes of a toddler. You know what I'm saying? And when we go back and we look at these events or these stories or these artifacts, and I consider them through, like I get down on the floor and lay down with the eyes of a newborn, this is what it would have meant. Because we have lots of evidence about children and we have very little evidence about archaeology. And by doing it this way, it starts to make more sense of some of the things we did, including where Satanism and all of this kind of nonsense comes from. Because now I have a map to the behavior of why they created it in the first place. That's my answer to the history problem. So in this case, I do believe that these particular things that I share, where we have the copper and the gold and the flint, I do believe that was the behavior that was going on there. And that's why we see evidence of that. Now, the rest of it and all the other stuff, I could care less about. I'm only talking about the things that I can absolutely show a very clear link that is undeniable.
Where I kind of stop and object is that I see children or infants or human behavior for that matter and its origin as one of copying. Like children copy and they'll copy whoever's around them. Now, if left alone with something new, they may do something new, but they come from a brainwashed source of copying. And I think it's innate in all of us to either copy our parents or copy whoever's around us, copy the older kids, so on and so forth. So when I look at interpreting an action or a behavior, I automatically ask, okay, they're copying somebody else, and who are they copying? Rather than, are they just going through reflexes or something else? You see?
Can I answer that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know exactly what you're describing. I'm right there with you. So how we understand this, and I would challenge the word copy to mimic instead. So how any living creature, so we're talking about animals too. Animals do the same thing. I think when we give birth and we go through all that exact process that causes the bonding through the pain and the pleasure hormones being released at the same time. That's why in the movies, during the scary encounter, the two people end up in some weird embrace, rolling around behind a couch while gunshots are ringing around. It's that exact same idea playing out there. The pleasure and the pain together form a bond. And so as the child comes out, or as the deer come out, so I'll say a deer here as well, it has specific things it must do first. And me personally, Charming, I actually believe, I'm still working on this paper because I really do believe this is what the evidence is leading me to, that fear is absolutely the lining factor at play, as if it's the equation that everything lies within. So I'm really starting to lean towards that because of, just the way the development works. If we don't move, we die. So something inside us says you have to move. And every living thing does that. Okay. Every living thing does that. Every living thing has to come out of something, like flowers come out of buds, and birds have to come out of shells, and there has to be this type of traumatic entrance. And as we move through, so when we're talking about mimicking, the first interactions are not mimics. They can't really even see what's going on. So there's no way. Now, they're already influenced through the movement of the mother, through the sounds of the mother. So we could argue that, yes, you're programmed already. And I could absolutely go right along with that too. I have plenty of evidence for these such things. But I think what you're discussing, or what this paper is suggesting, is the rawness of, there's no programming in the rawness of life. And the programming comes the minute the interaction begins. And the programming, if we're talking about ancient man, not today man, but ancient man. So the first, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens and these other groups, whatever their names are. I don't even care if the names are right. The point is that we had a group, we had some people and they came from different places, and they had certain behaviors that no matter where they came from, they all did it in the same order. They all had these. So it doesn't matter. You would have to argue that the dates are wrong. And then we'd have to go into, because one of the things that I really am careful when I do these is I have to go and look to see if this behavior shows up anywhere else in history. Am I seeing this today? No. I can only see it there. It's only there in that moment. So if we threw out dating altogether, well, that's fair. Then it won't work. But if we're trying to keep somewhat, the instinct to bang things is in a child before someone shows them to bang things. And if you leave a kid alone with blocks and you do not show them how to build blocks, but you just watch them in a room full of blocks, every child builds in a specific order. There's no programming going on there. It's in the programming is in the genetic or DNA or whatever it is, instinct, whatever that is, that causes the brain to unfold in a way of lining up, stacking up, and then pyramid. Well, then you get towers, and then you get bridges, and then you get, or arches, then you get the pyramids. So they have so I do agree. I think I've made my point. So I'll say this. I do absolutely agree that programming is taking place through the mimic response. But the mimic response comes only after the interaction begins. And I think in its most primitive days with the baby, the mimicking is only to learn. It's mimicking the mouth. The baby's eyes are drawn towards the mouth. And even in nursing, it can focus, a baby's gaze is the exact distance between their head and their mom's. And that gives them the clear, what are the odds of that? That's nature saying, hello, first face, gonna be your mom. And they start to see that clear very quickly. And then the mimicking starts by looking at the mouth and trying to then redo those reflexes. So I do agree mimicking is right out the gate, but it only comes after interaction. And so the instinct is to force interaction. And I think that drives all of the next things. And it slowly disappears as the mimicry gets higher. So the instincts to do things start to diminish. A baby's going to bang with its fists, rather you tell it no or not. Its instinct is to bang. Its instinct is to crawl. It is to roll over. It's going to do these things, whether you want it to or not. It has to. And so that's where I would argue that. I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, Charming. I would consider that our instincts actually is a huge role, if not the first role. Mimicry is a secondary sidekick, a Robin to Batman.
See, where I what stands out for me is that I believe we are all a product of previous brainwashing that was um, deliberate. So our parents and our grandparents were all subjected to different types of institutionalized mind control. May have been from a different era and different culture, but the mind control and the brainwashing that we experience today is all motivated from the same people who brainwashed our ancestors. And so our kids are mimicking us as we parent them, and our parenting style is influenced for better or worse by other people before us who either knew better or didn't. Um, and what I find interesting here in your article is the reference to metallurgy. And my belief is that what we have as the science of metallurgy came from elsewhere. It did not come from cavemen banging things together and eventually figuring out that, these materials have different
That's fair.
properties and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's fair. I would follow you down that. Mhm.
But
The
but
term is
my
different, but that doesn't mean we would call it that. And I think that's a very good point because if the behavior is not the same thing, then it is not the same thing. Mhm.
but at the very least, see, metallurgy requires pounding and banging things together and identifying how the materials respond differently in order to isolate different materials from each other. Now, I I want you to focus on this part here about the meteoric iron. If we were to take out the word meteoric from your article, would it change eh, the the meaning or your thesis?
Well, that term there describes these small. They're not necessarily from a meteor. They were just these small little beads of iron. So they were, you know, just like little tiny droplets of it. And this is just the name it's been given. And
Okay.
that doesn't necessarily mean that they're saying it came from a meteor. It's
Okay, I see.
in terms of science, that's what they call them.
I get it. Okay.
Yeah. So
Now,
I do understand what you're saying. And I might could find a different term just because I don't want somebody mistranslating. That would throw me off right away if I thought somebody mentioned aliens and that's not what they meant. So I'll go back and check to see if I can find another term that would work there that would also I see what you're hearing, and I didn't hear that when I read it. So fair enough.
well, no, that's okay. But well, okay,
They
I
were
don't know.
often used as beads or as little embellishments where gold was used for embellishments. It's too soft to be used in tools. So areas that had a lot of gold had a lot of decoration, and that's why you saw so many like golden palaces and gold. They lived in an area where gold was native. It's easily malleable. There were tons of it, and it's very pretty and shiny. And then areas that had copper, you see, and that's actually what inspired me to write this paper was because I was listening to a story, a myth of America, an American myth about the copper mines and the natives from America's old history from back. This continent has been here as long as everyone else's. And we're forgetting that people were here. We've been sold this story that, the British came over and took it from the Indians, but people have been on this land since the beginning of time. And so we had these copper mines where it appears as if during those that era of early man, we saw them using the vast amounts of copper. And so we have a lot of copper, artifacts from that area because they sat in the middle of it. And it could be used for tools. And so and then we had the iron there. Now the reason that this paper is important, maybe you don't know this, but these are the first 3 metals we saw used in archaeology. So let's just assume that we're correct in some of our dating. We can at least say this is older than something else. We didn't see other metals show up until after this stage, and we stayed in this stage for a very long time in history. And that's where I mentioned earlier in the paper that these aren't because we can't go any further. It's because we're mastering what we can do with what we have. And in baby terms, that might be, an hour, but in humanity terms, it can be, like God says, a minute to you is 1,000 years to me. It's going to look much larger. And as the whole collective human species, I found that whole copper area so interesting. And the fact that there isn't any other metals that show up. We don't get into metallurgy as we know it today until after this stage has completed and the banging and the finding uses for these metals has finished, that developmental stage. And these are also the softest that you can bang just by hitting. All the rest of the metals you have to heat first. These are the only 3 metals anywhere, now or then, that you do not have to do anything to change its property. You can just smash it. You can just hit it and it changes. None of the other metals do that. You can't hit iron and change it. You have to change its structure first. And I found that very interesting to me. That is what I'm saying. But first, I have to understand the banging reflex, which is what we see here, native metals that I can hit and manipulate with banging, just like a baby who is taking a fist and banging in the air and making the bouncy seat jump. They're interacting with their environment. They can manipulate it. And now they're going to master that manipulation. And through that mastery, they learn that they can change its property through temperature. And that comes in the next stage. And so if we fast forward to the baby stage, well, I'll show you where that shows up and why that behavior is there. Because the baby's mind is learning about these exact concepts of the physical world around them. A baby understands buoyancy before it has any idea that that word even exists. Because the minute a sitting baby can sit, balance becomes an issue and tubs become very wild. You ever seen a sitting baby in a tub? That moment that they're learning between balance and non-balance, their little faces are so funny.
You know what? That reminds me
Oh,
of a couple of people I encountered. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, my mic's on. Can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. It reminds me of a couple of people I encountered who are young parents, and they made a comment about how their kid still can't crawl. So at the age of 1, their kid is struggling to crawl. And, and I didn't know what to say. I was like, okay, my kid knew how to walk before he was a year old. And and your kid can't crawl, so it's been sitting in a chair eating for a full year. Like, wha like, that's a learned behavior. And
That's a baby that was never given the
I
time
I
to
I try
explore.
to yeah, yeah,
I have to have the
but,
freedom to explore
I
in
wanna go
order
back
to learn movement. Yeah. Go ahead.
I wanna go back to this metallurgy and look at this, this brief passage and read it as metaphor before science, okay? And what I notice what stands out is the word native, the earliest human interactions with metal. It doesn't say the earliest human interactions known with metal. Okay. Native. So gold is native, copper is native, but iron is not native. Iron comes from meteors, or metaphorically, it falls from the sky, sort of thing. But gold is native to our planet, copper is native to our planet, but here, iron is not. Now, the reason I bring this up is because through metaphor, this validates what I believe to be true. And what I believe, well, is that the knowledge of metallurgy came from out of this world. I'm convinced that it's it did not originate from cavemen banging things together. Somebody from out of this world visited man and told them that told them the basics of how to how to work metal. And here at the beginning, it sort of states the earliest human interactions as if it was absolutely known. And the reason I say that is because the the fine like the science behind metallurgy is very precise. And I would expect that if you had an infinite number of cavemen or monkeys and gave them an infinite number of metals and rocks and told them have at it, you wouldn't get to metallurgy as we have today. You'd still have a bunch of men and monkeys throwing rocks at each other, and it wouldn't go beyond that. That's how complicated metallurgy is, much like other sciences are. But the phrasing of this passage sounds like it's dropping a hint to religious beliefs. Now, I don't believe like I wouldn't expect that is your intent. And so I'm pointing it out that maybe a rewording of this in such a manner as to not leave that sort of metaphorical impression, if you don't want to, even though I agree with it metaphorically, you know, and it could be as easy as taking out the word meteoric iron, but this native up here, metallurgy, so metallurgy that came from man includes something that did not, that is not native. You see what I mean?
I do.
And even though I believe that to be the case, I I don't it stands out from the rest of your paper. You know what I mean?
Well, I have my, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Let me acknowledge what you're saying. And to a degree, I agree with you. Now, my idea of how that actually takes place might be a little bit different. I don't actually think that some alien or angel or something came from the sky and sat down on a rock and told Steve how to, to do metallurgy. I don't actually believe that. But I would explain it this way. And then, so I'm not, how I like to feel about this is I do not care if you, Charming, or anyone else wants to imagine any wonderful, whatever creature you could come up with to come down and talk to man. That does not bother me at all. You are more than welcome to have these opinions. But for me personally to accept that as an answer, I have to frame the story like this. Does that make sense? So I have to have it like this. And for me to accept that as a reality, because I do agree with you, I actually find it very interesting that we have these really wild ideas that come from, say, meditative states or otherworldly experiences. And I myself got this information from said experiences. And, so at that time in our history, I believe that we probably had a lot of near death experiences, a lot of death experiences, and some near death experiences, including food. Because let's remember what infant and newborn is also bringing us. Another behavior that happens during this phase is everything goes in the mouth. Everything goes in the mouth. If they can get their hands on it, it's in the mouth because they have a grasper reflex. And the grasper reflex makes the hand close like a Venus flytrap, and in instinct or reflex brings it to the mouth. I must taste it first. So I imagine that that's kind of what was going on. That's what humans were doing. And we were just experiencing everything. And so we would have had a lot of these experiences, I believe. It makes sense. I can say, well, that makes sense because, duh. I eat this and I get a little whoopee, or I almost die during that attack and I have a near death experience. That's not new to us now. We would have always had these. And I do believe that when you're in an unconscious state, you're tapping into the big ether, the umbilical cord, or the space between you and mother, what I think Jesus kind of represents. Saints represent the purgatory kind of idea. There's lots of different ways people would express the ether, the great collective, the hive. I like to think of it as a high school cafeteria. So that space there holds knowledge. The Akashic libraries is another term. And in these experiences, we get in touch with things. We Einstein used to describe it, if you believe in his myth, but a lot of people did. It's a dreamlike state. That's what Alice in Wonderland is. Dreamlike states. The Wizard of Oz. These epiphanies happening at odd times in your life. And I think that would have happened then. So yes, I agree completely that something helped us along, but I don't believe it came outside of us except in this way. If this is the way we're talking about outside of us, I can accept that because I've personally experienced that. But if we're talking about, some chosen person on a rock, some caveman on a rock, that some, being came down and chose to give this information to, I think that to me, that kind of takes it a little bit too sci-fi for me. But if I keep it in an actual human behavior development spectrum, the meaning of life, everything makes sense. All of that makes sense. And if in this experience, I did see a being, because that's what my brain is going to do for comfort reasons, then absolutely the myth can be born. But I don't believe that is a fact. For me, it's not. I don't believe that. I don't. For me, that's how I need to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, for me, it's just easier. It makes more sense that we got knowledge from somebody who was not born here, or somebody who, yeah, like that. And the reason I say that is because beyond metallurgy, the science of astronomy and astrology, or whatever's up above our heads, um, is not possible for cavemen to derive from scratch. And the ability to predict when planets and stars are going to appear in the next few hundred years or whatever, that can only come from somebody who wasn't born here?
I don't know. I really would. I
Well,
like what you're saying. I really do, but I have other explanations that to me make more sense that
well,
allow it to stay in the realm of what I can prove. I'm not saying you're wrong. I wouldn't put a bet on it or anything like that. It doesn't matter. I
yeah.
but
See,
I personally struggle with these ideas because I can see I've watched children and children are fucking brilliant. You don't give them enough credit. And I think the kids we see today are not the kids that were here before. And I just really like that that's something I can visually see and then go back into history and visually see. And it brings me a lot of comfort to think that I'm just a collective being growing up through the stages of physical self from the start of being an infant. And, you know, so although I also, as I said before, I would go along with, maybe the idea for a more complex version comes from a near death experience or something like that. I also, I also believe that it can come from the human mind. That I don't think, Charming, you're giving people quite the credit. Not people, the human body, God's creation of, if you will, our creator's version of the body was perfect. And we look at perfection as if it's failures and attempts, but that's all possible outcomes were counted for, and you're just growing through them. And as a species, and sometimes things are going great for you, and sometimes you fall off your bike and hit a fence. And now you're, at war with the Brits, because he's trying to take your lunch money. That's the age that we were during our revolution, when we had a bully trying to take our lunch money. That's the mentality of a child that age and what they're experiencing. And it would have been the very same for, little 9, 10-year-old boys growing up, all the way back at the beginning of man, before we had schools, before we had lunch money. It would have all still happened. And I can also look at the same behaviors in other species. So you can look at plenty of animals and watch their adolescence and their youth and the way they play, and it equals humans as well. That's a pattern that's in us. It's just there. And so I can accept that a kid would be smart enough to figure out metallurgy just because it banged two pieces of rock together. Absolutely. The more I bang it, the more. We're talking about millions of years here, millennia that they banged, So yes, the idea that something falls into a fire and it changes it, and I've witnessed that, and now I want to recreate it. That mimicry you talked about earlier, that is human behavior. That's what we do. So I find that more beautiful than the idea that somebody came and gave it to us. For me, the fairy tale must be that we are that beautifully and divinely made, and we did not need any intervention. I am, as the Bible says, perfect and divine in my making. I believe that. I think that's beautiful.
see, that's kind of like the first question I ask people of different religions, and like I ask them our origins. You know, are we created by the same guy? Like, do we have the same parents, same ancestors from long ago, or do we have different ancestors that just happen to be living in the same place? But at the same time, some kids are born deformed, and I don't know how to make sense out of that.
Nature has to make a lot of mistakes if we look at it that way. I don't think that it does, but that's how we would describe it.
Yeah,
So not every seed blooms, not every, or roots, not every child makes it, not That is nature's way. That's the balance. I watched this guy that he's so fascinating. If you're interested, I'll try to remember to link and to tag you in the next video I catch. But he goes out and just scoops up water out of random places and puts it in a jar and then leaves it and watches it and shares what happens in the jar. And so you get these tiny little ecosystems. He'll get a little bit of a plant, but it's just a pickle jar. It's not even a big jar. It can be a small jar. And he just watches them like he's got his own science experiments. And when you watch the time lapse and he's describing what happens within that tiny jar, you get a bloom of, because there's at first you'll start out with a lot of this in there. So whatever's in there that eats that gets, has a big boost of growth, and he'll show that, look, this one just, man, they've had babies crazy, but now that's gone. There's no food there. So they either have to change and start eating something else, or they die out and another one takes over. And I think that's an interesting way to view the whole of life. And the process of, I'm trying to think how to explain this gently, of just cycles, births, deaths, the equilibrium of nature. I know it doesn't sound pretty to a lot of people. Nobody wants, to lose somebody that they love. But at the same time, by developing and growing to a place where we can prevent these things, we've offset God's balance. And we've literally proclaimed ourselves at that moment to begin to take over. And now you could look at it in God's terms and you could say, oh, we're defiling God. But in developmental terms, this is adolescence. This is young adult behaviors. This is a separation from our parents, from Mother Nature, Father Time, into digital and our own, child, our own experience there of making life, right? We've always made life, but in the pattern of human development, we have a stage where we can make life. And that's the stage we're in. So to have this kind of AI and this kind of robot and all these pod babies and this type of behavior happening right now fits that exact moment that we're, experimenting and creating our own life, or our own lives for ourselves, our own future. And we're seeing that en masse. And a lot of people are making some money off of it. But I still think it's just behavioral. It's development. It's just developmental. It's normal. No demons needed for this story to be real. It's boring. I don't think people like to think of it because it's boring. Oh, you mean the bully at school isn't a monster? No, he's just a kid. His genetics are weird, and he wasn't raised in a nice place. And now he's a dick on the playground. Simple as that. Don't give them more power than they deserve.
Well, I'm gonna blaspheme with an alternate religious theory.
Please do.
Okay, I actually observe the same things and think it's more likely that the bully in school, he learned bullying from probably his parents, and then his parents learned it from their parents, and so on and so forth. But the spirit of bullying, um, I don't think that's scientifically normal. And so my theory is that half of us were created by one entity, and the other half of us were created by a competing entity who copied the first and flooded the earth with clones or hybrids or um, the same things as us. And over the years, the two different species that were scientifically the same or biologically the same interbred. And the spirit of bullying comes from the bad guy, and we just happen to have it in our genes. Some of us have maybe a little bit more than others, based on our genealogy and our family background. But we actually originate from or more than one creator, possibly three, who knows? The point being is that I see human behavior as a consequence of either brainwashing or outside influence competing with nature and reflex and instinct and things that are just normal to us as a biological or as an animal.
Well, I would challenge the fact that we're born. I do believe we are born with a violent temperament, not just through genetics, but I'm thinking before, before we had, you know, groups of people specifically choosing traits. And because even if you have, because the way a baby is developed, or way a human develops, it is the reaction of the mother that equals the outcome of the baby. And we think that these are mild, but they have really large consequences later on. We see that in orphanages. So, need I say more? So when we have a baby and its first instincts is the fist where they're swinging and kicking, they're going to kick and hit mom. Her reaction is going to imprint onto the child now, and there you get the mimicry. So although I do agree with you, but the mimicry comes after the interaction. So first the baby whaps its fist around and hits mom in the face, and she goes, "Oh, hey, don't hit," and grabs the little fist and puts it down. Or you have a parent that scolds the child or has a strange tone or yelps or hits them back or, flicks the little fingers. The reaction in that one little tiny thing that seems insignificant sets. It's like you've ever heard of how like ducklings will imprint. That's the first imprint of that first reaction. And then the mind will now start to decide what's reality. So if it continues to face this type of reaction, it will then start to gear towards this is my reality. And if it might face, the other side where it's consistently hit with, "Oh, don't do that," very nice tones, it's going to say, "This is my reality." And so if something where the mom then yelps one day because they are biting the nipple because the teeth are coming in, and now they're nursing and they bite, which happens to every baby, her reaction again imprints, and it sets the stage. Okay, so prior to this, my mom was always nice, but now here's a moment that it's changed. Not just a fist, it's my teeth. And her reaction to yelp might startle the child. And, "Oh, don't do that. I didn't like the way that felt. Are they put down? Are they pushed away? What happens in this interaction?" And now a new fork is pulled. Where is my reality? Is it going to teeter over to that side, or is it going to balance back out over to this side? And so all of our programming, like you said, genetics plays a role, but it's an interaction as well. And the interactions of what happens during those moments set a stage for stuff that happens when they get in, fourth grade, and, they want to fight you in the hall or, steal your hat on the way. Typically those boys are in double digits. And you're right, they got it at home, but it originally started from the reaction that they received when they were with their earliest caregivers. Now they might have a mother that's very loving, but they're going to regulate with her. So if she's with a spouse who's very aggressive, the time the baby spends is going to feel static. It's going to feel stressful. The baby will sense that sensation probably already was fed cortisol and all kinds of things inside the womb, already on its way. All the mother's experiences being flooded into the baby. So now the interaction becomes even more important. And if I have a mother who's very loving and another person, the you, when I finally realize there's a you that happens, in another 3 months, 6 months, then I might then have two realities where I have one safe reality and I have one wild reality. That's going to equal my behavior when I'm 10 and 11. Whether I become the bully or I become the victim. And that's why in these experiences we see with bullying and victims, they're extreme versions. They're either a child that's very recluse that's being bullied and a bully that's very bold. The middle kids aren't the ones that get picked on. That's why the bully knows exactly who, because their home is vital too, but they chose a different path. The reaction that they got from their mother or they got from their father equaled something else. Does that make sense?
Yes. Um, I see the whole thing a lot simpler in that, yeah, kids learn good and bad habits from their parents to start, and it's up to them to figure out as they mature um, which of those habits are good and bad, and to decide whether they want to carry on with them, change them, modify them, or whatever. So whether it's learning metallurgy or how to dance or balance
Mhm.
or climb a tree and or whatever it is that a young person has to learn in their community, it starts off with, like you say, the mother, and it requires the mother nursing, of course, but
So imagine a
the
culture of
child
people.
nursing and
I was going to say, Charming, imagine a future where we have generations that have not been nursed by their mothers. What would that equal as adults? Just a whole collective, global collective of human beings for two generations that did just were not nursed by their mothers. What would that equal as a moral value, uh, unconditional love type scenario? What do you think we would lean to if we never nursed? If the majority of people were not nursed by their mothers and then dropped off at daycares, do you think we'd have a good outcome or a bad outcome?
the short version is a bad outcome. The long version is that's what we're living right now. I
Agreed.
believe, yeah, but but I must emphasize this is a consequence of eugenics. Like the richest of the richest people in the world who financed all the schools and all the science programs and all the universities and all the medical programs and research or whatever, their intent was to mind control everybody to the individual's detriment. Okay, not for our benefit. Um, and so what we're experiencing, what we're living now, our modern culture is a consequence of that. And granted, not everybody is in the same boat, but we're predominantly influenced by people who did not nurse their kids and they weren't nursed. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of the bad parenting that was given to our parents and our grandparents. There's much worse. But it's all a constant. We're experiencing this chaotic end result of exactly what you said. And I'll add, um, how to put it, I'll I'll add the culture of inoculations for medicine as part of one of those negative influences that were inserted deliberately to create a negative result. All those heel pricks, on infants. The were All of that is to promote a child who's not inherently comfortable, who's constantly in fear of trauma, and to provoke psychological disorder, and to provoke aggression as a natural reflex. And I this is going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. I believe the um, the fear of negative physiologic effects from inoculations is primarily caused by psychological trauma. The damage that, um, or sorry, the vaccine injury, so to speak, comes about initially from physical trauma. It's the physical trauma of the injection that then goes
Agree.
on throughout the whole body, much like, the ancient Asians came up with all these maps of pressure points in our body or trigger points where they stick their acupuncture needle here and then it affects something else in your body or whatever. I don't know enough about that, but I do believe they there's some scientific basis behind it, at least as an electronic transmission,
Ooh,
whereby, something on one end of your body is electronically connected to something else in your body and it's not intuitive. And the effect of the inoculation is to create damage through acupuncture as opposed to any sort of benefit. So worrying about what the chemical compound is in this invisible sort of serum, I think is a dead end, or will lead to, turning around in circles and more confusion. But I'm convinced that the reason for the heel prick in the infant and the newborn and all the mass inoculations is to provoke fear. And I'm not really afraid of needles, but I've encountered a few people who are, and their fear of needles is is very irrational and paralyzing to them. And so I can't imagine being in their shoes, having to get a shot every whatever frequency, and to go through that 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 phobia and the stress and the
immersion
trauma
therapy.
leading up to it. Yeah. And so what I'm getting at is I see us more so as a product of copying, mimicking, and outside influence, both, physically as well as mentally, more so than reflex and anything that's native. Not that they're not that we can't flourish without brainwashing and outside influence or eugenics. I actually believe we'd flourish better without any of that. Just letting a child explore and leave them alone, so to speak. But what we have today is is controlled more so than the philosophy that underpins archaeology. So the premise and the underlying thesis of your paper implies experimentation and the freedom to explore and learn on their own. And yet, I actually believe we're the product of the opposite,
Well, that's fair.
to our own
I
detriment,
appreciate you
for that
reading my
matter.
stuff anyway. I still find it neat. I've never heard anybody talk about it before, so I definitely am interested. I'm a fan of my stuff. It's very comfortable to me. But I don't care that someone, I love that you can read it just and understand that this is my fairy tale story way of describing what's going on. This is mine. If I was writing a book and fan fiction, this is exactly what my story would be. And you're going to have your own story, and somebody else is going to have their own story. Does it make the fairy tale less powerful if we know the underlining means of what we're saying? Because it really doesn't matter to argue who the creator is. Here we are. and you know, something you reminded me of though, and I want to share it with you. It's so weird that you brought that up about acupuncture. Because I'm currently playing with an idea about, I was looking at the birth process and the fact that I was actually looking at the evolution of a species. And what I mean by that is, when do we reclassify the human genome and now say, okay, you're no longer Neanderthals. We do not have any more Neanderthal gene in us except a minute amount. So we're going to have to switch it, because Neanderthals didn't get beaten or destroyed. They were absorbed. So we're all if you believe these things, okay, then we can put another name on it. It doesn't matter. But earlier humans just absorbed into other humans. They just started mating and then they started mixing. That's what we do. Go forth and multiply. That's what God told them to do. That's what they did. And and now, in order to have a species go, by definition, extinct, certain criteria have to happen. One, it can't be having any more babies. So you need some type of infertility happening so that they're not reproducing and anymore. So their numbers just dwindle and then they eventually get absorbed in. So, right, we're not talking about a full extinction like a big bomb comes and blows all the people up, a rapture. We're not talking about that. We're talking about how a species could do this. So one, I have to lower fertility rates. I'm talking like Bill Gates right now. I have to lower fertility rates. And then I have to introduce a new species. I have to introduce my seed and my seed only. And that's coming from your Epstein files, if you remember. And that's how I'm going to. So now, even people who, because of infertility, they're going to get a baby that has been genetically modified. These genetically modified babies will not be the same as a human being. They're going to be reclassified as something else. And they have a bunch of terms already lined up. Well, this really just got me thinking about the nature of things and what happens when, we miss out on some very vital moments in our life that we don't think are significant, but are probably really telling. And that led me to the very first experience we have, which is the experience of birth. And like you were talking about there, a child that's not nursed, the outcome, we have lots of papers on what the outcome is. But what about a child that's not birthed? What about a mother that doesn't go through the pain to have the baby? That changes things. That changes the bond. It changes the experience. What happens there? How many generations does that affect the ultimate outcome? So I was thinking about that. And then that got me thinking about the very first moments of birth. And if left to their own devices, in a normal situation, the umbilical cord starts to dry off. The mom is going to pick it away. Baby's going to be born first. After all that pain, it's exhausting. The baby has to feel the pain too. Babies do not cry. Okay, that's a misnomer. Not every baby cries. If left alone, a baby will just come out. It does not need to cry. The crown comes out first, stretching the opening. Then the shoulders add an extra little stretch of that rubber band. Like when you pull a rubber band the first time, you pull it's real tense. And then you pull a rubber band the second time and it's a little bit looser. And then the third time, that's perfect. So I've got this stretching that first time and then a little shoulder, and then the body just slides out with all the fluid because if the body came out first, this is why breech births are dangerous. Body comes out first, the hole isn't stretched yet. You could squish it. You can have more problems. And now the head's not going to come out because the neck is not a battering ram. Top of the head is the battering ram. And these experiences, the squeezing of the skull or the crown of thorns on the baby's head, as the head is squeezed together to come out that hole, and then shoot. And then the mother holds it, and they're both so exhausted they just fall asleep. Babies do not have to cry to clear lungs. The birthing process itself will do it. And that's only part of the clearing of the lungs. A lot of the fluid gets absorbed back into the baby. A lot of people don't know that either. It's not like there's all this fluid running around. There's a process that starts to absorb the fluid that happens during the birthing process as well. So now they're asleep, they wake up, they eat. She's right there, then baby's head. Come to find out that cheese that babies are born with, this is where I landed and where I'll get to your acupuncture. So that cheese that babies are born with, we often call it like cradle cap when they're older, but when they're born, they have this vernix all over their body. It's like a cheese. And nowadays it's wiped off so quick. Parents don't even know that their babies are born with these things. But there's glands in the body that produce this cheese. This cheese is microbial. It's healthy. It helps the baby, their skin to stay moist after the birthing process. It's not necessarily meant to be wiped off right away. And when I'm learning about its microbial benefits, I then, on a side note, went on a hunt to see if any elites or epigenetics or longevity research or face cream companies have been using baby cheese in their products. And come to find out, that has some moral and ethical bounds they're not willing to cross, right? But they are making synthetic versions of it, which means we have been using its natural origins. I didn't know that about it, and I found that very interesting. But these glands are in specific places, the lower back, the head, and when they secrete these things, that cheese that covers the body, it's not on the stomach or chest. There's very little of it there. It forms into the creases and cracks like the neck and behind the ears and in the finger cracks and there under the arms. And in the groin area is another high prevalence. And this really got me thinking about exactly what you're saying, reflexology. Because before I had doctors with towels, I just had me and a bush, and I just spit out a baby. I've taken a nap, we've ate, and now I'm inspecting my child. And as I'm inspecting my child, that cheese has, because it's a biofilm, it wafts off a smell. That's the smell that has been well studied in mothers' abilities to smell their own babies. This is so well studied that it's accepted as a fact. Mothers can smell their babies because the top of the head, where the glands are for this cradle cappy stuff, this biofilm to protect the baby, right there on the fontanella where the baby's head is very sensitive. It's a sensitive area. In the groined area, again, we'll get to that. And on the lower back, notice the location of these things. Why would the location of these things? So it's got this big whiff of the hair of the baby's scalp in the mother. The scent bond is made. The mother starts smelling the baby. That's exactly where she's at. And the little, the baby's nursing, the distance, think of it's like 1 foot. Why is it 1 foot? Why are the boobs where they are? Wouldn't it have been smarter if they'd been on our back so we could have carried the baby around? No, they're in a specific location for a lot of reasons. Nature doesn't do anything for one purpose. And so we get these things, and now the mother is starting to inspect her baby, and she's starting to clean the baby. And it turns out that these specific areas, the groin is connected to the bowels and the digestive system. You see it in wild nature. So a cat will lick and puppies will lick the baby's bottoms and vaginas to turn on the digestive systems. It's connected to the digestive. There's also some research that I found out about this biofilm that it kind of floats around because it is just part of the baby in the womb, and the baby drinks it or inhales it, and it gets or swallows it, and it goes into the gut. And the research is showing that this biofilm in the gut of the fetal is building those early blocks of gut bio chemical, the way we are. And I thought that's amazing. So here's another purpose for it. And then as a mother now, I'm changing my baby's diaper and I'm wiping more in the groined area to get the cheese off, which stimulates the digestive system, stimulates the organs to start going. And I also have it on the lower back, a large clump of it. So I start to rub the lower back to get it off, or to, as I'm just experimenting. I'm not saying we're taking the baby and I'm talking about, think of yourself as the first woman with a baby, how you to be exploring your baby and you've got some more on there, and you would be rubbing it and petting it and licking it and, doing all these things to your baby. And that lower back also connected to other systems, the nervous system, the autonomic systems, the head as well, on the top of the head. That rubbing there sets on things like your autonomic system and those specific locations. And now the cheese under the neck and behind the ears and the fingers, these are proprioception. So as you're digging between the baby's fingers and you're rubbing each little finger, these are studies in baby massage that they've done that show what happens when a baby is massaged in specific areas in the baby's brain. And it turns out that the same places that this vernix forms, these glands are, and the places that it, by just physics alone, locates itself, becomes a trigger to setting off the baby's system. And I think that's fucking amazing. And here we are wiping it off and rubbing it off in these aggressive ways and pricking their feet and smacking them and getting them to call out and cry. All of these things are unnatural. And the baby system will come online in order it's needed, not right away. And there's actually some people coming out now, natural childbirth, who are using some of this. So it's not just that God knew, but now science comes along and says, yeah, God knew, it was right. But they're encouraging mothers or encouraging midwives or natural births not to wipe the stuff off. It serves a big purpose and should stay on the baby for a while. And so, but that will never make it, because we're talking about pod babies now. So it just amazes me that again, I say, I'm divinely created. What are the odds? What are the odds? Nature said, well, I got to put the gland somewhere. I need something to protect. Well, let's put it in an area here that's connected to that. That's smart thinking. The lower back it goes. That's just amazing. So I really love that you said that, because I was just doing that like yesterday. I was looking into that, and I thought that was so neat to learn about. And I thought, how could I write this into a paper? And it turns out that I have found some people who have looked into these ideas. I mentioned some of the things, but nobody has written that I can find. I'll try again with another rewording of the search a few more times. But so far, I couldn't find anybody else that's describing it in this way. And the few that I did are so close to this that I can use them as a reference and do that as a provable point. Don't mess with what Mother Nature gave us.
No. You got it all wrong. You're supposed to throw them in a little bucket and toss them all into a room all by them, with the other little animals, and you're supposed to look at them through a glass window from another room.
Yeah, don't smell your babies. They stink.
It's funny, you touched on something that's been bothering me for a while, and that is,
Yeah.
I've never seen an infant scratch himself. And so I wonder, okay, so we bundle them up in their clothing or their diaper or we swaddle them up in a blanket, and what if they've got an itch? I start to imagine myself. Like, when I've got an itch, I gotta scratch it. And so the kid that's all tied up and left alone, he's like in nonstop torture. and he can't even say anything. He doesn't even know what to do, you know? Whereas the kid, like you said, who's cleaned and licked by, like, the cow that licks the calf and keeps the baby clean, or the mother who has got the baby in her arms all the time, you know, will detect when the kid's uncomfortable immediately.
That's a
And
good point.
the
Sorry.
yeah, the mother or the cat or the cow may not be thinking in terms of, "Oh, I know my baby's got an itch somewhere. I don't know where it is, so I got to track it down and scratch it for them or whatever." But whatever they're doing in terms of holding their child and going about their business involves being conscious of the child's comfort. And in the event that there is an itch, any sort of squirming around of the kid will convey that in some manner. And um and we're the product of kids who were like, we were probably all thrown in an incubator or those buckets in the hospital and wrapped up, and who knows how much mental torment we endured over something as dumb simple as an itch. you know
Yeah. Well, just so you know, babies don't have itches. Well, not in the way that you would have an itch. So that actually, that sensation isn't going to come for a little bit. So just, you have to conquer annihilation. And I
but we
mean that.
covered
I'm not just making that up. Babies really do not physically, they cannot scratch or itch. They're not going to experience a fly, a bug can land on them, crawl on them in the very beginning, and they hardly notice. A dog's tail even can wag on their face, and other than a little, it's not going to, as they age though, and you'll know it because what you'll know the moment it happens, because the fear of body mutilation and body invasion comes on, and we've now learned that we are a unique species by this stage, by 6 months, or roughly thereof. As we're it's not going to be right on. That's the development. But as we transition from that, so when a fly lands on the baby's arm, the baby's now aware of the fly or can feel the fly, even if it can't see it, and will react to swat away or grab at it. And that's when your itches show up. So if you start holding down a baby at this age, yes, you're torturing them. Before that, they're not really presently aware. And there is some science behind that. I mean, that's God doing that on purpose. You can't have babies the earliest stage of your whole life, the very beginning. God would be a dick if he made you aware. That is the most vulnerable part. So God made sure that in the part that almost every living species is the most vulnerable at birth and just shortly after. And for that reason, God was kind, and he didn't have awareness, if you like to look at it in those terms. But mathematically, we don't have the ability to have awareness yet. We are still regulated by mother. We are one with her. She is us. And so we do not feel separate. We think babies are experiencing separation anxiety, and that is not what is happening. That is different. A newborn baby does not have separation anxiety. If the mother is gone, the baby is gone. It doesn't exist. It's in a void of nothing. It has no system to regulate. It doesn't know what's going on. There's nothing to hold on to. So it feels more like how you might describe falling in a dream. I mean, if you want to think of torture terms. But without the mother, the baby is unaware. And awareness shows up around 3 months. And then you start to have some, a little bit more of an interaction. The baby can hold on to you. The baby can, interact with you, smile and get your attention, make noises and get your attention. The mother is not the first you. The father's the first you, because the mother is always the baby. Baby does not see mother separate before it recognizes the second person. So before the brain can understand a second person, the mother and the baby are already one. So when the brain clicks on and says, oh, there's a you, that you would be the father, whoever the other caregiver would be. But in my fan fiction, I like to keep it traditional. And the father becomes a you, and the mother is still the child. Child doesn't separate or come back with mother as separate until almost double digits, believe it or not. I think it's about 9, because at 7, they're very father focused. And then around 9, they start to come back to mother focused. And then it waxes and wanes. But mother is actually not the second person they recognize. It would be the father as the second person the brain recognizes. I think the developing brain is fascinating.
I like how you highlight the baby and the mother being one entity in the infant's early development, because before the kid's born, the mother is the world. Like, they're totally surrounded by the mother's, breathing and circulatory system. Like, the mother is the world. Now, I want to tie in something where to refer to the itching. I think diapers change all that, and toilet training it throws a monkey like a wrench into all that. Our modern sort of diaper culture seems very uncomfortable to an infant. And I think if I were to guess, the father becomes identifiable to the infant when the father starts changing the diapers. Because up until that point, the baby and the mother are one. So when the mother changes the baby's diaper, mentally, it doesn't seem like an abstract or a separation or a cleaving of two identities. The idea of a second person existing, I would guess, comes when dad starts pitching in and doing the bathing and the changing the diapers, for whatever that worth that may be intellectually. That could be the snippet or the branch of another article.
Yeah, I
But
like
I
what you're
think
saying.
our modern culture of disposable diapers. The reason I bring that up is because as a young parent, I'd encounter other parents and kids that would be wearing the same diaper for a long time, and it's like it just boggled my mind how uncomfortable that may be to an infant. I can't imagine. But if we were to roll back the tape to the caveman stage, diapers didn't exist,
Right.
and a kid who wet themselves or whatever was hosed off right away, you know, or thrown down.
Well,
But like it
you
was
have to.
managed differently, and it was
Let me tell you
managed
something.
immediately.
Well, let me tell you something unique about the human body and toddlers or potty training children. So even diaper babies do this. This is an instinct we have as a human being. They crawl into a corner somewhere private. They squat and they shit in their diaper. So imagine if we were cave people and we had no diapers. How do you think a toddler would respond when they started to learn bathroom, when they became aware of their body movements? They would go over, squat under a bush, and shit and come back to mother. That is what they do in real life, diaper or no diaper. So the design for us to not have waste on us, we didn't need toilet paper if you squat and shit unless something's wrong with you, right? So wiping, peeing, again, what is that? Just a wipe for a mother, if she even bothers back then, because we're talking about people who were just running around naked or with very little clothing on here, very early humans. We did start to cover ourselves at a certain point, but a lot of our time was spent just running around, free to the world. And most of the coverings that we would have initially covered ourselves with, being a good example here with the diapers, were in fact of, leather to cover vulnerable areas, like the groin. So even the behavior of diapering shows up at the exact same time in history that we began to cover ourselves for protection. And I find that freaking fascinating. What are the odds of that? Didn't show up later, didn't show up before, shows up right there on time with the concept of, body awareness, which is what potty training falls under. So we didn't need diapers. Our bodies are buttholes. It's all designed to expel excrement away from the body. I just say, go outside. If daddy's pooping over in the bush, the toddler's going to go poop over in the bush. That's what they're going to copy and do. I don't think we think we had these people just dropping shits everywhere. I think we did. God put it in us to do it a certain way with instinctual pleasure. And we would have done it back then in the same fashion.
I think it starts with mom feeling, the baby wetting themselves and like jumping and going, and holding the kid out at a distance at arm's length to drain themselves. And so it wouldn't take long for the infant to understand that there's something happening here. And there's no warning from mom. So where's the warning? So like making the cerebral connections in a child, I think is easy at an early stage, whereby diapers, like you said, aren't really needed. And if the kid's going to be pinching a loaf or whatever, mom doesn't need it on her. So again, mom will like hold the kid out at arm's length or run to behind the bush and hold the kid out. The kid will figure it out within short order. And then mom will probably hose him off in the river before she puts him back onto her chest.
I think to here, remember, I believe swaddling was used very early. I don't think swaddling, using a hide or something to attach ropes and things to attach the baby to yourself. I think, especially in migration type early, humans, I think we wouldn't have been carrying it with our arms. Our arms would have needed to be free. So the baby would have been strapped to us. So I think we learned to do that quite quickly. Now, if you know anything about swaddling, that's going to hold any poop or pee or whatever anyway. It acts almost as if it's a diaper. And now you could probably put it in such a way that it could drip down your back, but it's not going to. It's going to stay in that little pocket, whatever you've created, either on your front or on the back of you. So the baby would have been protected from elements as well. So it would have been covered. Think of like a papoose for a Native American or a native, you're an American too. You're just not a United States of American. But that we have in our stories here, the little papoose. I used to love, I had some little story and a little doll that had a papoose, and I was like, I loved it when I was a kid. So the containment was there, so the only that you might be holding your baby and you're grinding some bread or something and maybe the baby poops on you, but another thing we have to realize is babies expel magic. So do mothers. So babies poo also has some healing factors to it. If it's breast milk, it can be used in a lot of different ways. So I think we have to view how early man might have used or experienced body functions differently than how we would experience them. We get the color purple because somebody peed on a snail. That when you pee on a snail, you hit it with ammonia, it excretes a purple dye. Now, there's a couple other myths about the color purple, but that is one we can actually have we can prove that's what they were doing. These early cave people were peeing on this snail, and they have societies and giant, archaeological sites full of these snail shells and the dyeing of purple. I think that's exactly that. It's a pot, and it shows up in a potty training, the same epoch we would be potty training, the same epoch we were talking about. So the idea that I'm peeing and pooping on things just to see what happens, or by accident, because what does a baby do, a toddler do, but aim? I mean, I've seen so many little boy toddlers, shooting at stuff. You can even buy like little targets to put in the toilet for them. Why wouldn't I think that man would have been running around pissing on shit? Of course he would. I would. If I had a penis, I'd have pissed on everything. Do you know what I'm saying? That's normal. That's a behavior we have, and it's expressed in that way. I think when we look at these ancient stories, or how we imagine our ancestors acted in the world, it's really good to think of it as you would have acted, or how you see that particular age acting in the world. It's just like, it's real crystal clear. You're like, oh, shoot. Of course, they pissed in everything. Very funny.
Well, see, I would expect toilet training to happen a lot earlier amongst people who had to do their own laundry. So the swaddling and the papoose includes a mother who has to clean it off. And before that, a mother who, in the process of going about her business with the kid on her back or hanging off her chest, will feel when the kid has to take a dump before it's too late. And I'd expect the mom to notice, okay, there's some rumbling going on here. Stop everything, unwrap the kid, and hold them over the pot, or hold them over the river, or hold them over whatever, the bush, and then rewrap them to avoid having to do to do too much laundry.
I
And
don't know.
in the process,
I would argue, Charming, that they didn't view laundry like you do.
but what I'm getting at is, um, before the kid wets themselves or soils themselves, the mom knows there's something rumbling, and knows it's coming. And so the 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 learning of toilet training involves a child making the association between, okay, mom stopped everything, tore off my clothes, and held me over the pot, with, okay, maybe the next time this rumbling develops, you know, the kid can do it himself. So the transition between a kid soiling themselves wearing a diaper to fully toilet trained involves the kid noticing the patterns in how
Okay.
the mother responds.
Okay, I got this one. So, what's going on in the baby's or the child's brain at this time? So, they're learning body awareness. So, body awareness is that feeling, I have to go, and that ability to hold, I have to go. So, potty training shows up as body awareness is being explored within, it's unfolding in the brain. It's learning boundaries. Remember, this is toddling. So, at this point in time, babies are bumping into things, they're falling off things, they're hitting their head on things, they're learning where their body begins and where their body ends and the world begins. And that body sensation, or knowing my body, also includes my internal functions. So food becomes an experience, and potty training becomes an experience. The body already knows that food comes in and food goes out long before it has any way of understanding what that means. So, even the child can start to put together the pattern of, I eat and 2 hours later I poop. And and at this point too, these babies would still have been breastfed. And so they would have been eating natural foods. They would have fed their babies bananas and things as early as possible, trust me. But we don't live in that society now. But we would have been exposing them as soon as they start to put things in their mouth. They're going to be doing that whether I hand them the carrot or not. If they grab it, it goes in the mouth. So that's how they're exploring the world. And so they start to recognize these patterns that happen. Now, as far as, a mother stopping and taking all that shit off and letting the baby take a shit there in the bush, I don't think so. I think the papoose there would probably have been poop in them. Poop at this time is naturally fed and not formula or baby food fed. The poop is not the consistency that you might imagine. It has a very sweet odor, and breastfed babies have a yellow, seedy type poop as well. And if you fill in natural foods, you're going to have a different experience. It's not going to have a foul odor. Diapers have a stink. Breastfed babies do not. They smell sweet. They smell like popcorn. They do not have the same odor, much like we were talking about earlier with the head. So your experience there isn't going to be the same. And every time they stopped by clean water and had a moment to break, they also washed the baby. And they would have taken it out, let it stretch a little, stuck it in the water, in the cool water, wrapped the baby back up in it, all papoosey, and it kept them cool, and then went on again. I don't think that they would have been worried about, the buildup of, it's not safe. The kid's going to shit. Sorry. As a mother, I'm not going to care. I'm not going to be bothered by it. And like I said, it's not the same odor that you would be thinking, or disgust factor. It's not the same poop that babies that do not breastfeed have. It is a completely different color, smell, texture. It's expressed differently, totally different. It's very liquidy, not liquidy. It's kind of, but it's not pasty. Natural digestive tract processes are taking place in there. And so by the time they have body awareness and they actually can now not bump their head when they stand up under the table, you'll see them start to kind of scooch out from underneath it, all crunched down. They also now have the ability to know that they have to go to the bathroom and hold it for an extended amount of time, unless that's completely challenged. But they can go, oh, I gotta go. They have body awareness outside and inside. And that's where you see that. Yes, the mother's role in all of that is important, but even without all of that, the processes are still taking place.
I want to bring up something that you mentioned with respect to conditions under which population would go extinct. And I believe that on a long enough timeline, if a tribe does not get new blood, doesn't have foreigners join the tribe, they eventually degrade through inbreeding. They degrade and turn into Neanderthals, and then they disappear. And so our ability to survive, like the fact that we're alive today, would imply that we're the children of a sequence of tribes that were able to get new blood or able to avoid repeated inbreeding, which makes me wonder, why are we of so many different races? It's odd. I just bring this up as part of the to counter the philosophy of archaeology, going back to primitive form. There's something about our past that was able to fight off inbreeding, and yet at the same time preserve distinct races. What it is, I don't know.
So it sounds to me like you're saying something about us is attracted to people that are similar to us. And yet, because
Yeah,
inbreeding specifically says that, I'm choosing to do this, but you're describing just a natural thing we have just as human beings, where we tend to be attracted to someone who is more like us than less like us as far as looks go. It's that tribe factor. Part of the reason why the tribes wore different feathers and this, that, and the other, so that they could see each other from a distance when they were walking into territories or camps. You don't want to sneak up on your friends, so they all know that the guys with the blue feathers are friendly. That would have been very early coding to keep things. That seems normal for a human to do. I can find that in the behavior of the child. Attracted to things that are comfortable because I need that for safety. It's a safety mechanism God gave me. If I'm in a room and my mother's gone, but there's a bunch of, men, I'm going to freak out. I'm going to have a different reaction. But there's lots of mothers. I'm going to scan the room and see if any mother calls for me. And then, you know what I'm saying? The reaction of that sitting in the middle of the space child is completely different depending on who's in the room. Mm-hmm.
yeah. I find it, yeah, it's interesting in that the world's filled with so many distinct races, and at the same time, the only way that they're that we're all able to be alive now is is a result of the balance between what, just like you said, we're more attracted to people who are like us, who look like us, than not. But at the same
Well,
time, we have to accept new blood into the tribe.
but is that not developmental as well, Charming? Because as I grow up as a child, don't I start accepting more and more people outside of my family into my circles? Don't I start including others? And still in the beginning, because of my environment, I'm roughly stuck with the people that are similar to me. So that could be countrywide. But at some point, now I'm intermingling with, some other people. And I go to university and now, I'm taking classes with a guy from Kenya who's really rad and kind of cute. You see what I mean?
Yes. And at the same time,
Developmentally accurate. Yeah.
yeah. And at the same time, there's the bully in the school who does the opposite. And how many bullies do you see? Like, how many of the bullies in school went on to college or university? I don't know. But there's two competing sort of spirits.
Well, not everybody
The
that was
bully,
punching people in the nose is a bully. Most of the people that we see in politics today, Musk, Gates, these are the kids that were shoved in lockers. Do you know the Incredibles movie on the little boy, Buddy, and he wants to be a superhero, and Mr. Incredible says, he's not affiliated with me. He has nothing to do with me. Get out of here. Go home, Buddy. And Buddy goes home and then builds a weapon to start killing every super on the planet because he got shoved in a locker when he was 13 by some football kids. And now he wants all the football kids' wives. It's Revenge of the Nerds. They weren't bullies then. They had the thoughts, dreams, and desires of bullies. They didn't have the confidence yet. That came after they got more degrees and looked better and lived longer. Got rubbing elbows with that guy and this guy. So the type of bullies that if we're going to talk about bullies, we have to be specific about which kind we're talking about because there's two different kinds.
well, I'm just saying that the spirit of bullying is um, competes with the spirit of a person who accepts different people. These are two different spirits of man. Now, they manifest themselves differently. How the bully grows up and seeks their revenge or whatever may then get more complicated. But the spirit of bullying competes with the natural need for a tribe to accept strangers or new blood. Because the tribe that doesn't accept a stranger eventually dies out and disappears. And so maybe there's something genetic in it that's transmitted, or maybe it's just, you know, parents teaching their kids to be nice. I don't know. But they're two different spirits.
Yeah, I think this is how I kind of think about when I have little cartoon characters playing out in my brain. I imagine like a bunch of little, just my little, caveman, and there's a little group of them, and there's this one kid that he's always been a little pushy, something about him. He's just kind of born that way, and so he gets big all of a sudden. And I've actually seen this take place with toddlers, even if they come from a good family. The toddler gets bigger than the other kids, and they can just take what they want from them. They can push them over. They're just bigger. And because of this behavior, they kind of learn that, oh, well, if I want that, I can just push this guy over because I'm bigger than him. And then they just start throwing that weight around. If nobody is around to stop them, well, then they'll take over the room. And that happens without any words being spoken. I've seen it with my own two eyes. And now I imagine that we probably had a very similar situation in the past. And there was this big caveman. Everybody called him, Bob. And he just walked in and he pushed you off your rock and he stole your turkey leg or your dinosaur leg. And he sat down and grabbed your cup, Helen Keller style, around the table. And nobody liked him. Everybody hated him. They threw rocks at him. And, and then I imagined there's a little me, a little Joanie Rotten. And she's looking at this and she, he's getting upset and they're upset and everybody's upset. And she has this idea. Maybe it came to her in a dream. And she goes over and she taps the grumpy guy on the back. She says, "Excuse me. What would you do? Would you give me half of your turkey leg if I got all of those people to give you their turkey leg, give you one every time we ate, just bring it to you and hand it to you and say, here, thank you. Would you let me have one?" And he says, "Yeah, sure." And she goes, "I'll be right back." And she goes off and she comes back and she says, "You are now our king." And she puts a little crown on his head. "You're going to keep us safe from all of the big bad bears and all of the mean dinosaurs because you're bigger and you can fight them off and save us. And if you protect us from all of the bad things out there, then we will all give you our food in the evenings. We'll make sure we give you extra." And he agrees, and the people agree, and he has his own little special stool now, rock, so he's not pushing anybody off of the rock. And he gets to sit there, and everybody brings him a little potato and a turkey leg or a dinosaur leg, and they all say thank you. Now he's not mean anymore. No, but everybody loves him, and nobody's throwing rocks at him. Now he's going to take this job very seriously because he doesn't like having rocks thrown at him. Now you have what we have today in just a simple little story with a bishop and a king, a bully and a sidler. I can get them to love you if you just do one little thing. And is that wrong? Is that not taking our strengths and using them, for us instead of against us? It's a brilliant plan. It's gotten out of hand. That's how I visualize how we get here in these kind of stories, because that I can see that happening. We do that all the time. That's clubs. That comes with the very next stage after toddler and preschool, where we start having He-Man woman hater clubs. That's a developmental moment, behavior that happens no matter where you are on the planet. And it always happens around the same age. And there we go. We get religion. We get king. We get leaders, rulers, pharaohs coming in. All of that was toddler. Pharaohs, the Bible, that's all toddler land. Noah's Ark. Noah's Ark would be a baby milestone. And then everything we have after that is going to be toddler. All of the Bible describes toddler-like behaviors. And all of that moment in time is toddler-like behaviors. It's mutilation. It's grotesque. It's invasion. It's being loud and marching around the walls of the Jericho and tooting our horn. Doot, doot, doot. That's all toddler. That is all absolute body movement and awareness, invasion, mutilation behaviors. I'll be right back. I have to go to the ladies' room. I'll be right back.
Okay, take your time. Make sure you. I would just, well, I think what modern or human civilization distinguishes itself from that sort of format by having a class, an army or a class of soldiers that can or cannot be controlled by the king. What we have now is the sort of outward appearance of kingdoms and a king and a bunch of citizens who are subordinate to it. But in the shadows, what's missing is the Praetorian class or the armies and the generals that go on to subvert the king or plot against the king or plot amongst themselves against each other or against the king. And so we've got the story of Caesar, and we've got the guy who betrayed him. So now we've got the stories of presidents and prime ministers and kings. And behind the scenes, there's a whole class of people who are trying to subvert the king. And they're fighting amongst themselves in order to be able to do that, but still maintain the illusion of the king being in power, which then, keeps the bad guys hidden. Thanks for that, JC, on a bike clip. Really interesting. What's the bike clip? Did I miss, I don't know, The Sixth Sense? Oh, that's from you, look. Did I miss a link? A clip?
No, I think that was from the other day.
Sure.
I think he shared it with him the other day. Sent it to him on a different stream, not yours, but on a stream the other day. Yeah, JC on the bike is good. It's a channel you should check out for sure.
JC on a bike?
Yeah, JC on a bike. Put the link out there, or Lance. Do you have it handy? Share the love.
See, Joanie, I was saying that the model of how the king develops, I mean, that works. I think kings develop in a similar manner at the end of a battle or a war. The biggest guy or the best warrior is then surrounded by everybody who's like, okay, you got to be our king. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely happens because behavior is there for it to happen. But before it happens in other ways. So before we're actually, and if you notice in children, that is the behavior. That's an I am. Age 3 is an I am. We've conquered the toddling stage. And so by the time we've reached that, we've understood lying, we've understood sneaky, we've mastered movement. We can manipulate parents and others around us. 3-year-olds can manipulate people. We don't realize just how amazing our brains are. And so by the time we reach that 3-year-old in history, we start to see that introduction into the more king and queen type ideas that you're seeing or that you were just describing. Prior to that, it's more of someone being kind of chosen to be in this role or choosing themselves to be in that role. And that's a very I am type thing to do. So by the time we finish toddlerhood, we declare ourselves an I am. So we spend that whole stage, we're separating from mother. Movement causes separation from mother. So now I'm separating from the 1 into 2. I'm moving away from her. And I can also see, I know object permanence. I know something still is still there, even if I can't see it. I'm learning mirror and reflection. Sitting babies and toddlers understand that that's a reflection of themselves. Prior to that, they think it's another baby. So they have a sense of where I begin and, I end and the world begins. And at the end of that, they can declare themselves an I am. Because they've done all of the work necessary to understand who they are. And so we see that. I am the Pharaoh. I am Ra. I am, this, that, and the other, the sun and the moon. And we see a lot of animal, so them dressing up and skins, and that's all behavioral. That's what we would do. I am. So when they put on, so we know this from folklore, when they put on the headdresses, they are the eagle. The eagle is me. This isn't a trance they go into. It's a belief of the developmental stage that I eat and consume what I am. And even though the baby doesn't understand that, baby understands that. That's why it's instincts to put everything in its environment, in its mouth, because I am my environment. My environment is me. When I put on this eagle, I am mother. I am earth. I am eagle. I am. That's how they would say. And that's because that's exactly how the brain is working at that moment. I am. Woof, woof. I'm a dog, mommy. They are a fucking dog. That's why they have this very clear and vivid imagination. They can superimpose visions and see things. That's all testable. And you can just spend time with a kid and that's it. You don't see that. You don't see Bigfoot in the woods, Mom. They see Bigfoot. They see it. They see the dragon. I am the dragon. I see it. That disappears once we reach elementary school, and it's almost gone completely by the time we reach teenage years or adolescent years. The imagination starts internalizing again. And we start imagining with romantic partners, the internalization. Well, we go back to a me for a while. Everything's about me in adolescence, teen angst and all. That's a first I am moment. I think it's beautiful. It describes what we saw in the Old Testament, describes a lot of what we see there. And then once we get into, moving along, we go into medieval times and things like this. We're talking elementary school now. And we have the behavior of, or preschool, where we're dressing up and we're putting ridiculous makeup on our face. If that's not a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old in mommy's makeup, I don't know what is. It's ridiculous amounts of powder, wigs, and dressing up. That's preschool behavior. Come on. Classic.
Well, I firmly, I start off with interpreting human behavior as a form of mimicry mixed in with creativity. But I ask, who who's copying who?
Well, I think that's ultimately what the meaning
Right?
of life is trying to answer, Charming, because we're copying ourselves. We're doing what
Mhm.
humans do on a macro scale, on a large scale. We're doing exactly the same behaviors. We are teenagers right now. We are acting like teenagers. We are mimicking the behaviors that are in front of us. Think about when we started to get TV. This is also a very good point because prior to TV, think about how society looked. So, before we'll say silver screen, even. So, before we have Hollywood, think of the way the world looked and the influence that television gave to the housewives, to the children. I remember my dad saying he didn't really like me watching Roseanne or shows like that because they were not wholesome family shows. And that's not how we wanted to have a family. And so, of course, I thought he was, my age. I'm like, ugh. But I do understand what he meant there. Had I been younger, he was absolutely right. I was a teenager for crying out loud. I get to watch the show. But even as a young child, he was really careful about what I could watch because it influences. We're going to mimic what we see on TV. And I remember even back in the 90s, with kids, and if they watched a certain show, they would act that out. So oftentimes, TV being removed from you as a punishment was because you started acting like the people on TV. I don't have a little Disney mousy girl in my house. Okay. I have you. And if that's how you're going to act, then you can't hang out with that person on the television. And so that's clear that it was infecting. I was teaching preschool, Charming, at the time of the Power Rangers. Okay. I was babysitting in teenage years at the time of the Power Rangers. So do you know what every little boy was doing in his spare time and in the kitchen and in the room and in the living room and at school? They were karate chopping each other. It was wild. I would go to like preschool. I was lucky to be going to, well, I won't go into details, but I was lucky enough to have somebody encouraged us to do things. And we were at these conferences and stuff. Every single teacher there, all you had to do was say, "Are your kids doing the Power Puff?" Oh my gosh, I can't get them to stop doing the Power Ranger, oh, go, go Power Rangers. We all knew the song. Um, that's because they're being influenced. That's a really good example. Think about the millennials and the television shows that were influencing them, the Nickelodeon and the Disney and what we know about them. So I absolutely agree with you. And what's really interesting about the screen is that in the meaning of life, we get the television screen in late elementary school when we're at double digits. So we're talking 10 years old, roughly, right? We're not exactly, oh, we had a birthday, but the silver screen, or what we eventually, we come to know as our first screen popular type, I think, show up at a transition where we're moving into double digits and our identity is about to be challenged. And who we are leans heavily on our peers, hence the television, becoming a peer, becoming a babysitter, and all of the shows. So the history of television is interesting. The history of television mirroring alongside age development appropriation of the 8 to 13-year-old or 14-year-olds is mind-boggling. And there's your programming, because there's the science that says, oh yeah, I can see why this works so well. And then if we're talking about a species level, and the species is in double digits, and now we have the whole collective influence, like you're saying there. Holy shit. They gave us Roseanne's, and they gave us Bill Nye the Science Guys, and they gave us all of these characters now. And everyone is finding a character, just like Shakespeare says, what's your character? Who are you? Are you a jock? Are you a cheerleader? Are you on the chess club? Or maybe you play the band? What do you like? What's your club? What part of the library do you like to hang out with? Where do you go? Do you guys go to because when I was in school, different groups went to different restaurants even. So like we liked Pizza Hut and we were the only group that went to Pizza Hut. Another group was always at Taco Bell. And every now and then we might run into each other because we feel like Taco Bell today. But we all had our own little hangout restaurants that we went to. We all had our own little likes and dislikes as a group. And that's what we're seeing now. And my social scores are starting to matter. How people perceive me. Oh my God, somebody got a picture of me doing something bad. That's all adolescence, man. On crack. Scary.
But my understanding is that kids these days don't watch television the way we did, and the way our parents did.
Right. Because they're
Like,
interacting with each other now.
so
That's development, right? Do you remember when you were a kid and you finally got into double digits and you could go outside freely and you could just be in the world differently? How often did you typically watch the TV then? You're going to get up and move. You want to go do something. That's natural, whether you have a TV or not. Kids today, so we're taking this out globally or collectively now. So that same behavior of the desire to get up and go. I'm not saying every kid does it, but it's a desire that we have at a certain age to go out and explore the world at a double digit where we really don't need parental. This is one of the first times we can just go off and, and be home by a light. We're not on a super, watched as much. And that happens in any society, no matter what the dangers are. As kids separate from their families and go further and further and further into the world, it's typically double digits that we were allowed to ride around neighborhoods and go a little bit further than just our block. So if we think about it in that sense, then we're not in front of the TV. We're going off and doing something. I think what you're hinting on, at least from my perspective, is that we have turned the TV into the friends. So I'm not going off and riding my bike with my friends. I'm riding my bike with my phone and my friends. And I'm live streaming it. And almost I've been playing with the idea that some of this isolation we're experiencing is normal teen angst. I just want to get away from you. I don't want to be around you, so I'm going to go hang out in my room and listen to records. But there's also in that retreat people that are pulling out for safety purposes, not to recoup. And that can be a form of, abuse. And so when you're talking about parental abuse, triangulating and alienating and grounding your kids and getting them to stay in their room and making sure they have books and food, and Amazon will bring them a little care package, but don't leave your house. That's very abusive. And that's how a lot of society is living currently, in this kind of over-controlled, abusive control relationship with the outside world. And, in the sci-fi movies where they show the person like pushing a button and they're back home talking to their kids on Earth, it's kind of like that's the reality everywhere. As if we're all talking in our little Star Trek thingies.
I think that's by design. I think, but at the same time, I see differences amongst people, and what you pointed out, uh, the innate or the instinct to explore, to get out and explore, is what distinguishes people. Not everybody has that instinct. Like some people have the instinct of doing the opposite, like you said, crawling away and isolating themselves for the sake of protection. And whereas others want to get out and discover and take the risk of danger in a new environment. But that's the price they pay to feed their desire to explore. And the spirit of exploration, pardon me, is, I think, a threat to the controllers and the richest bad people of the world. And that's why we're flooded with nonsense, brainwashing, fake science, fake geography to kill the spirit of exploration, or at least to control it, or veer it off into a dead end. But the spirit of exploration um, isn't shared amongst everybody. There's a lot of people who would rather, like you say, stay in their room. Now, that may be a result of brainwashing or abuse or going to school, but it may be innate. I don't know. But I think it's what distinguishes many people, like separates people down an aisle.
I would agree. You got me thinking about about the idea of what exactly is exploration. So now our definition of exploration is, we go outside and we explore our environment, or, this is the time that we're going to be swinging across creeks and stuff, right? This is the time of these types of adventures. Well, think Stand By Me as a film reference to the adventures that a double-digit kid goes on. So, but that desire to explore is ingrained in us, let's say. So if I can't go outside and explore and I'm supposed to stay home because I don't know, there's a pandemic or prices of gas are expensive, or, somebody might abduct me or whatever. Because kids don't even play in neighborhoods anymore. Maybe the television's on, I don't know. But like you said, we're not watching television. So it's almost as if the desire to explore is still overriding the television. So instead, the television turned into the internet. It turned into TikTok and social media as a place to explore. A very dangerous, as equally dangerous, if not more so, than going outside and running around the neighborhood and the freeway, in a sense. So maybe we could argue
Intellectually, yes. Yeah.
that even our desire to explore is overrides our location. We just choose a different way to do it. This time we're doing it through our minds, but that desire is still there. And as you're saying, they're controlling, or they're at least giving us what they want us to be exploring. So just the idea of removing videos or banning people for saying this or saying that challenges my freedom of exploration from a psychological, biological sense.
Yes. And nonsense, like controlled opposition, teletube influencers, much like, well, one clear example that I encountered was these mud flutters and these Tartarians, and the whole space NASA flat Earth psyop was to harness people with that spirit of exploration and discovery and research and Scooby Dooby and all that stuff, and to control them and to make them look stupid, and to get them watching reruns of Gilligan's Island over and over again, going nowhere, and um, keep them in a corner and make make it so that their spirit of exploration doesn't actually lead them to explore. It just transforms them into a different fan of a different television show, and they end up becoming consumers of entertainment rather than um, actually exploring. I like bringing up the mud floods, because I I fell for it, and then I realized that the more I went outside and hiking in certain parts of the countryside that I hadn't seen before, I got a chance to actually look at the environment and physically touch it, and kind of Scooby-Doo my way to realize that the mud flood was complete nonsense, and the only person who could truly be fooled by the mud flood psyop would be somebody who's living in an apartment or living in the city or never has a chance to go out and explore or go hiking in the mountains or in a forest for that matter. And it made me feel sad for all the kids who grew up in the city because I realize how easy it is to be fooled and not even realize it. I don't know if anybody's. Are you familiar with the Mud Floods television show on YouTube? Like,
I
have
am.
you?
I agree with you. I think I'm not. I don't doubt that there's not places that had mudslides or shifting of Earth, but as the whole thing goes, no, I don't. I think that to me, it feels cherry picked, but it could. I mean, I think the idea is fun. It's fun to explore. It's a fascinating story, but it's never been one that's attracted me as much as others. Now, I have other things I think sound more logical, but that one's interesting. But no, I don't.
Yeah.
I think there's a logical explanation for some of it. There seems like there can be a logical explanation for this and not that.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed right off the bat is that an abandoned building or an abandoned structure eventually gets overgrown with weeds. Like vegetation covers it up, and sometimes the vegetation destroys it, but eventually an abandoned building or house or structure, even if it's all stone, will eventually be covered by weeds and vines, and it could even hide the structure. And so when a Freemason who wants to get masonry for free discovers this, well, you got to hack away at the vines or whatever, or maybe burn them down to disclose what was underneath it. And when you remove vegetation from a building, it creates the appearance that the building was covered in mud. And so it doesn't take much to realize that the whole mud flood scam is a very, very silly psychological operation to keep people like in the dark and believing science fiction and going nowhere with their exploratory spirit. And so, like you said, whether somebody explores outside or in our modern culture does exploration at the library or on the internet, doing research to learn more and more and more that their physical environment can't provide. I I see barriers that are put up deliberately by the same people who taught our parents to stick a needle in our heels and to send us off to daycare and wearing diapers. you know? Oh no, a flat butt. Yeah. See, the earth isn't really flat because there's mountains and valleys. So I don't believe the earth is truly flat. But
Is that the
yeah,
difference? Is there some kind, if you don't believe in the mud floods, you're a flat earther? I didn't know there were rules. Is this like if I
oh
say
no.
I can't eat
Well,
fish?
see,
I
see
have
the
rules to what I can believe and can't believe. Oh my goodness. I don't know. I feel like I'm in church again.
see, I like rules. There's so many different rules. Like if you try to fly like a bird, you'll fall down like an apple and crush yourself and die. And so we don't have to pay taxes to enforce that rule. Oh yeah.
We should go and we should have anybody show up to help talk them down.
No. What's this?
Yeah.
Let me read this. Same, but with the Air Force, Science Jefferson Labs, particle accelerator, and spaceships basically in my backyard. Part of my life since I was born. Others don't have that kind of access to the stuff. Yes. Um, I used to go to the library, read books,
Do you
borrow
remember?
books,
Yeah.
believe everything I read.
Yeah.
And then I realized that some of what I read wasn't all true, but it had a date and a bibliographic reference that had other references, you know, and
Well, I
nice
would encourage
pictures and
you,
cartoons.
Charlie, when you're looking at history, when you come across something like that, anything, mud floods, whatever it is, whatever ridiculous thing that you're looking at, look at it through a developmental lens, keeping in mind the age of the mentality and behaviors of the cultures that are doing these things. And it will help you understand what these guys say that's absolute garbage and what makes sense and what could possibly be a more appropriate thing for what we're doing here. You know, so developmental lens helps you understand history and know why we did the things we did. And it's not what they say. And that's what I write my papers about. I'm challenging everything archaeology says about this stuff. You know, we say that they're worshiping, sun gods and making golden thrones. No, they had access to gold and something to smack it with. And this is what they did with it. It's as simple as that. You were to give a baby, a specific set of toys, and that was all they had. That's what they're going to do. And if this group had gold and that group had, it's as if Mother Nature allowed culture to birth or maintain places where we had this material around, like a little gift from the gods that says, hey, you guys like to bang stuff. Why don't you stop here? There's a creek, there's a cave, and guess what? There's shiny stuff inside you can smash in the wall with a rock. And so they start doing that. And in over millennia, they've goldified everything. Have you ever seen a little kid with some stickers? Have you ever seen a toddler with stickers? They'll have stickers on freaking everything. There'll be stickers on the TV and everything will be covered in stickers. That's what we do. That's why we have these big ornate things that come out of there. You can't say, well, babies can't make stuff. Yeah, you can. Sure you do. Your definition is screwed. It didn't come from, no offense, but it doesn't have to come from an outer space being coming down and zapping, the wall. That's not how it has to go down. It can go down naturally. Still normal. I don't think people know enough about child development. They've never spent enough time looking at children and watching children, learning about them. Instead, they're watching too many sci-fi movies and Star Trek episodes. And they have a very skewed look at humanity. If humanity is God and God created human beings, then we are the answer to our problems. We put the key to life inside us through our natural behaviors and how we interact with the physical world, minus any kind of woohoo. We all have the same behaviors regardless, but they can be manipulated by the environment, but they're there regardless.
I think the one distinguishing factor that is overlooked with respect to parenting and the influences upon parenting is that not all children are wanted. Not all parents wanted to be parents, and they're resentful. And I would expect that for some of us, that had an impact on how we were parented in ways that we may never know. And um, well, I got to say something. I've got thousands of records, and I don't have a record player. It's been a couple decades since I've owned a record player. Yeah, but I think what influences or what would lead a parent to becoming a good parent as opposed to a bad parent, or let me rephrase that, a parent that is uh, that naturally has the instinct to follow everything that you were saying, as opposed to a parent that would have a natural instinct to be fooled by deliberate brainwashing and to take up bad habits and bad advice from their parents or wherever is is may come down to whether that parent really loves their child or not. And I would expect a parent that really loves their child as an individual would want to be closer to that child than not. And that sort of desire to be close to the child would then naturally, without anybody having to tell anybody anything, lead the parent to learn to recognize what works and what doesn't work. When to change the diaper, when not to change a diaper. If that's if that's all there is, you know, whether the parent's smart or not, their desire to want to be with their child and to observe their child would lead them to becoming a better parent that would then or lead to the child developing good habits too. That's just my gut. And it's something that parents don't, I've never really encountered in child rearing discussions or with other parents. But I I have the suspicion that what's at the heart of a lot of um, toxic behavior, consequence of bad parenting that in turn is now whether that changes in the future, I don't know. But there's just so much in it. Like I don't know where a young person today would get their parenting advice, whether it's from their own parents or from books in the library. Because the books are, you can get in the parenting section in the library are filled with a lot of nonsense too. Whether it's through television or not, I don't know. But when you mentioned your dad not wanting you to watch certain TV shows, I think he's right. Like everything on television and in the movies is fabricated to to provoke bad habits and aggressive behavior and disruptive behavior and along the way bad parenting. I would expect our parents got parenting advice from the television just as much as anybody else did. But
Well, one thing I
I
think
don't
is
think kids should watch any television.
one of the things that this is what I'm trying. I don't know if it's going to
Sorry,
work.
go ahead.
Experiment is not done. But one of the things that I'm trying with Wee is that I want to create for her an expression of the world I wish for her to live in, is to the best I can. I'd love to add more, but I can't do everything. So I'm making her aware of, she doesn't spend time with people who are aggressive. There's no abuse in our family. Nobody's yelling at each other. And that includes our friends. Our friends have been married for years and decades and all of their life in some cases. Our friends are good, standing people. So I trying to encourage her environment to be not a safety structure. It's not like that. But if she grows up feeling like this is what feels safe, this is what feels comfortable and home-like, then when she runs into people in the world that don't vibe that way, if you will, if you'll allow me, she's going to be repelled by them. If she comes across someone who is aggressive or, snaps at her, she's not experienced that. So she's not going to stay in a relationship with a douchebag, at least not that long. You see what I mean? So part of the reason that we end up in toxic relationships is because we have toxic environments. And as parents, some of us are trying to keep that in mind in this world of a toxic world where TikTok and TV and Disney and music and halftime shows is toxic. It's all disgusting. The lyrics, the imagery, they're all seeing it. And that's why they're attracted to it. Even if they think they're not, even if they don't think they're attracted to it, they are. And every child development study is going to tell you that teenagers love the occult. That's the first time they're going to start asking questions about the devil, or am I bad and am I good and what kind. It's a prime age for sorcery and that's why in all the movies the teenage girls become witches at 16 or 14 or sometime during puberty, and why the Jews have bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and sweet 16s, because that's where we're starting to have these kinds of concepts coming into our brains. And it seems to me like, we might be few and far between to find someone else in a world who's also was raised in an environment that fostered a feeling of safety and comfort, as opposed to wild and crazy and stressful. So I pray she finds somebody that is equally yoked to her. And that's what I think that means. Because yes, if I mess up anywhere, I potentially could hand her right over to the hands of a monster. But I'm hoping she won't even get through the door, because on the first date, she's going to go, no, you're kind of rude. I'm not going to let you go on a second date with me. The more interactions we have with the bad guy, the more control he thinks he has. Anyway, these are my thoughts on what happens in a world with exactly what you're describing, where there's no boundaries and, wild and perverse behavior is accepted and played with and practiced. Then it becomes a go-to comfortable location when they're adults, and it matters, and who they're picking to have children with, and so forth and so on.
It reminds me, maybe I'm going to be sounding like a broken record. I may have already recounted this tale, but it reminds me of the passage somewhere in the Bible where Abraham sends one of his men out to find a wife for his son Isaac, and the instruction he gives to his handler is he sends him off to a town, and he says, take note of the first girl who comes up to you with water to drink, and tell her that your master came here to speak to her father. And so the deal is that Isaac's future wife was a girl who came up, gave him water, and gave water to his camel. And that was how Abraham was able to identify a good girl. He would tell her that his master came to see her and wants to speak to her father. But it's not like there was any predestined Sarah, is the first girl who stood out and was charitable to a stranger, which is a brief theme that reappears in somewhere in the New Testament. I think Jesus told people to be kind to strangers in a world where a stranger was often met with skepticism, probably as an outlaw. Like a stranger approaching a tribe has to explain why he's been ostracized, or why he's alone. Like, who does not want him? You know, um, and I and when you say teach your daughter to distinguish between people, it starts it starts at the beginning, and starts, I think, with parents setting an example. So how the parent treats the kid is the best is the major influence on what that kid ends up doing, whether it's fostering a spirit of exploration or crushing it. Wait, Retro says that's if people need help in physics, they'll ask someone that knows not a flat earthers. Oh, not a flat earthers that think we're in a dome. Yeah, that's not really it. But as long as people believe light above their heads travels in straight lines, all's good. I kind of see uh well, I see the flat earth and the space psyop as exactly what NASA says. It's a way to control people who have an exploratory spirit and make sure they don't learn stuff that the military industrial complex does not want them to learn.
Mark a few things
That's
classified
it.
so we
But
can declassify them 30 years later. Don't forget. Stamp that one declassified. But it isn't.
yeah,
You put it there as declassified. We'll
yeah,
take it out later. We'll use it. Oh, you're so smart, devil. Stamp, stamp, stamp. Everybody's picking
yeah.
on
The devil is quite clever.
a date last night, so we're all razzing him.
Oh yeah, yeah. Retro, how'd it go? I hope it went well. If it
We're
didn't
all
go
doing
well,
it
I hope you don't
again
have
for that
to think
date.
about it again.
Apparently, they had a nice
Well,
time, so they're friendly. So that's good. We just met the girl. We don't want him to run off and get married and leave us just yet. We gotta slow
well,
our
I
roll.
guess we'll know. I guess we'll know without having to be
He only
told.
likes you because of your collection, Retro.
Yeah. Yeah, it won't take long for us to figure it out. Like, where's Retro? He's gone. We haven't heard from him in months. Okay, that's a good thing.
I like to think too, it helps me when I am parenting. Suzanne, this might help you too if you're listening. But I'm not raising a daughter. I'm raising an adult woman, and I'm raising the mother of my grandchildren. I'm raising my future genetic line's mother. And how do I want my grandchildren to act? Because they're going to act the way their mother acts, and their mother acts going to act the way I act, and so forth and so on. So it helps a little when we get short tempered. I know you're a good mom. I'm not trying to give you mothering advice. These are just some of the things that I've been thinking about lately, because sometimes it's hard, to maintain. Sometimes I'm like, you're getting on my nerves. You just are. I don't know what to say here. And I'm trying to figure out how to navigate. And I remind her that this is the first time I'm doing this. So not only is she the first time being 10, I'm the first time of having a little girl who is 10 and having to figure out what's going on and work with her. And, thinking about that and talking about, the things I do wrong, you try your own way. Don't say grandma did it this way and say grandma did it this way and I didn't like it. So I'm trying it this way with you. We'll see what happens. Like almost passing down the idea that it's one, okay to make mistakes. Two, it's even better to try to change the mistakes that were made in the next go. That's the only I can't go back and change the past, but this moment will show up again with her daughter or her child when they're 10 or they're 6. And she'll have a moment where she can change what was done before. That's what we're doing, right? That's what I hope we're trying to do. I don't think people are viewing parenting in this way. And so they're busy worried about who they're dating and ex-husbands and, my pants with the gems on the back and which Bible study group, and, which one of Erica's necklaces I think looks the most like my necklaces or whatever. We're busy doing that. We're not even looking at our kids, and they don't want you looking at them anyway. So, they've been also taught to don't look at me. They should be seen and not heard. Right? Weird.
See, that's the way I see it. Like, my kids are, I'm raising the parents of my grandkids, and I I can't imagine what goes on in the mind, in the hearts of people who don't see it that way. But I've encountered a lot of people that don't seem to be of like mind in that regard. But I like to dumb it down to the caveman level. And and I've had a very bizarre experience working in a sort of semi-retirement old folks home. And it made me feel so sad to see all these wonderful old people, at different stages of degradation. Some of them were in perfect health, others weren't, but all of them abandoned and alone. And it it dawned on me that, if if not for selfish reasons, a parent should be very kind and charitable to their child, because at some point in time, they're not going to be able to wipe their own ass. Like, who's going to wipe your ass before you die? Who's going to be the last person to wipe your ass? Will it be you or somebody else? Now, if you live long enough and you get, disabled and arthritic or whatever, you'll need help. So who's that going to be? Well, the old fashioned sort of caveman traditional style is that'll be your kids, because, grandma and grandpa will be sitting in the corner, and they'll be babysitting the grandkids, and then the grandkids will grow up, and eventually the cycle of life is either, you trust your family to help take care of you or you don't. And so whether a parent likes their kid or not, or wants their kid or not, I mean, at some point, everybody's going to be reduced to a state of dependency, or reverting back to a childlike state where they'll need somebody's help, if not to, at the very least, to wipe their ass. So who's going to wipe your ass? And the way you treat your kids is going to be a reflection of what you get back in your old age. Like, did a parent who is abusive to their kids is probably not going to get a child who'll be happy to take care of them in their old age. And so now that's why we got this messed up culture, where old folks who've got a lot of money are thrown in tiny little cubicle apartments, and they're left alone.
Where was the bond? If the bond wasn't there between the mother and child, and the mother and father, or the child and father, if the bond was never made, it's easy for them to just dismiss you. If their bond is there, then you are glad to keep your mom home. You want her close to you. And if that means that I have to wipe my mom's ass, and that's what I'm going to do, because I need her near me. She's an important part of who I am and how I view the world. That doesn't have to be a sick, dense way to do that. A healthy way. I love my mother. She's a pain in my ass, but I would wipe her ass, or I'd pay somebody to do it before I put her somewhere, unless I couldn't help it. I think that's what that's how we should love each other. She did the best she could, and I survived, and I don't want anything bad to happen to her. She is just an extension of me. She is an extension of my her granddaughter. And so why would we want to show that? If you put your mom in, you better believe your kids are going to put you in, even if you were a nice mother, setting an example. So, I absolutely agree with you. In a perfect world, that's how it would be. I understand people have circumstances or whatever, but ideally, we're designed to take care of those who came before us. I think that's what the bond is for, so that it outlasts and remains after, growing up has completed. And so that, God knew somebody had to take care of Pops. And I want to make sure. So if everything went right, we would have a bond with our mother and a tight bond with our fathers. And it would work out, and we'd take care of them when they were old. Hi, Retro. Sorry. I was finishing my thought. I'm done now.
Hello,
Shut up.
Retro. Welcome.
It took me a minute to log in, so I missed
Welcome
the last 35 seconds of conversation. So I'm fine catching up.
You see,
is my mic? Can y'all hear me? Okay, number one. It's check microphone.
Yeah.
Working.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, I reset my mic always like twice when I get in the room, because it usually starts with the badness. Meaning, even if the echo cancellation is on, and don't have the TV on, use the first or second try, something's wrong.
Yeah, your volume level.
Y'all reading my chat area. Hello, everybody in the chat. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Y'all had some questions about my day. I might be able to answer some, but I'm trying to plead the fifth here. Got airplane. There's been last 2 days. The airplane's been crazy. 2 days ago, it was like war was happening over my head over here, with all the planes.
I hear trains by my place more so than airplanes. But Joanie, I would suggest. Oh wait, I'm worried. I've got something not working here. Because I can't get Retro's microphone is muted.
I mute myself when I don't talk.
Oh, maybe he muted it himself. Okay,
yeah, sorry. I mute when I'm not talking.
Okay, that explains it. I was worried that I did because
yeah, I'm on a lot of live shows, and they're usually better the more people in the chat. If you mute and let someone else talk.
Yeah, I was. I'm of the opinion that most of us are alive today because the preponderance of our family line, like our ancestors.
You say family line or family loins?
Were predominantly of like mind. Specific line, but also, and they babysit, and their grandparents babysitted their grandkids. In practical terms, what motivated them, I don't know, but we're alive today because that was the majority style of parenting. Whether it was deliberate or not, I don't know.
Yeah, we all have generation gaps from one to the next.
See, oh yeah,
like the TV generation, punk rock music, metal music was all the music is usually the music itself is rebellion. Each class, each stage of music is a rebellion against what happened before in music, which is the people before, which is usually the parents. So I think it's cool when people skip a generation when raising a kids. Like my dad was, born in the 30s. So it's like there was at least a generation or two multi-gap there. To have me So it's just like I learned from that 50s generation, people that grew up in the 50s, you know, taught me things. So it's just like I had a different you know, growing up, I grew up in the 80s, taught by someone that grew up in the 50s. So, you know, a little bit different upbringing than other people that didn't have the same kind of generation gap. So I didn't need to rebel against him. I thought he was ignorant, like he had no idea about the trends because he was so generationally gapped.
Well, I see a lot of I see a lot of disorder and chaos in the outside influences with respect to parenting, and I'll just throw out a few experiences. Uh, my mom got parenting advice from a bunch of old nuns who were nurses who spent their entire life as nurses and teachers, taking care of orphans, you know. And if we were to go further back in my family history, um, a lot of old women would give their children spoonfuls of brandy to shut them up and make them go to sleep. So my ancestors um, had alcohol poisoning in their brains as infants. And that explains a lot. But where they got that idea, I don't know. Maybe they were raised that way too. But my point being is that there's a lot of outside influence that affect parenting, and we are a chaotic hodgepodge mess of all of it. But I think the majority, like majority of our ancestors took care of their grandkids and their grandparents without any sort of outside institutional coercion or influence, for that matter. And that's why we're alive today. And that may be dwindling in the future, but our family lines operated that way throughout the majority of human history, in my opinion. And if I'm wrong, that's okay too. We've got the ability to change that. So how'd the date go? Do you want to see her again?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. After the background check, though, we can't get rid of those warrants now, can we? Just... So yeah, I didn't know what people's general questions. I probably can't answer much, but I just yeah, I definitely plan on seeing this person again until they're tired of me or, you know, don't want to hang out or something.
All right.
But
that's exciting. Okay, well, you know we're gonna rag
or until she asks for
every time you. So
until
always
she asks you for money.
She needs the cash.
Has she asked you for money yet?
All of it, yeah. All of it. Yep, you got to pay in advance these days. You got to put the payment in, and then you wait for the receipt. My cat wants to go out. No. I mean, we obviously met somewhere, so it's everything. Everything's good, and we've run into each other, and things have been positive. Like I said, I mean, if she doesn't like me, that's up to her. It's not up to me. So that means someone else is, you know, better. That's all that means, y'all. The universe is trying to talk to you when something doesn't work out with someone. It's always because there's someone better. Like I feel like this works with this person at this moment. This is definitely better than the last relationship I was in. I can just tell, you know, just being honest here, that this person has their shit together more than the last person I was with, hands down.
Good.
But everybody has issues, so it's just like finding out what those are and what you're dealing with is always part of the fun. So, you know, someone could have warrants, they could have people chasing them, they could have, you know, big debts. You never know until you find out what's really going on with someone. I mean, there's other things to look into, definitely mental stability. But and everybody has to look at their own before they're willing to judge someone else's. So whatever that even keel is, if they're doing less harm to the world than good and more positive to your life than negative, it's usually a good sign that it's going in the right direction until it's different. So that's how I read the weather and the sails, and that's what my sails are still catching some of that wind. That's everything feels pretty good. I just have a lot of self-doubt because I've been single since May, when I dumped that girl that was just being so mean to me, y'all. She was so mean.
She was a cunt. I didn't like her.
Yeah, y'all. Like, no one else really gave me advice about her. So, I mean, I kind of told y'all the truth, some of the stuff she was going on. And she was just kind of cold, like very cold with me. Like, she never cuddled in bed unless she was completely wasted or anything. And she would just like go flat to sleep, and she would just act like basically like she was my less than symbiotic roommate that I was helping in life. And it just made me feel like shit because she was just not complimentary. It was just bizarre. So I had really never experienced a girl like that. And I've usually broke up with all of them, by the way, and I have to blame myself for being single when I'm the one that dumps them. It's hard to be like, oh, I'm single, this sucks on Valentine's. Well, I'm the one that has dumped the last at least 3 or so. So, I mean, I'm single from my own device of realizing those people weren't right for me. So I put myself on the path that I'm on for apparently someone more right, whatever direction that is. And whatever I learned from this and can, just continue. I'm making stuff. So I feel like that's good. So as long as I'm making stuff and I feel like, I don't really have much of a heart to break at my age. So I feel like it's already been through its worst. They can't do much worse to it. They're, covering gravel and kerosene and dragging across scorpion tails or something. But I don't think that's possible quite as much anymore. So yeah. Just bad experience last time. And
well, that just kind of reminds me of earlier. We were saying, you know the person by the way you feel when you're around them. And if you don't vibe with them, you pick up on that and you go, hey, I don't like being treated like this. I didn't like it when I was before, and I don't like it now. I can't even put my finger on it. I'm just not comfortable here.
But we can't get mad at people for changing either, so even if the girl I'm talking to changes, like it's just how things are,
40,
there's more time in life. Say this girl meets me now, say she's secretly dating someone she didn't want to tell me about because she thought I was cool, or got back with her ex and didn't want to tell me. You get what I'm saying, y'all? And then she's still willing to hang out and chit chat. And so that means like I'm not trying to be shitty to myself, but back burner. But it doesn't mean she's not considering me or thinking when she's more cleared up on her personal schedule.
She likes spending time with you as well right now.
Right. And I don't mind because I'm old and she's not as old, and she's very cute. And she seems a lot more honest than the last one. And yeah, she's a joy to be around. She's a joy to be around.
How old is she?
I'm not saying. I'm not.
Are we doing an Epstein check on you, Retro?
Yes. No, she is legal in most states. Yes, she is legal. She is legal. She is just probably right. She is 3 ticks over legal, and the 4th tick is in 30 days.
Ugh. Okay. Have fun with your blow up doll.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. I meet lots of people sometimes when I go out or do things, and just like not everybody stops to chat as long. So it just feels good to have someone that does, answer and is interested in what you're talking about, or does want to hang out and chit chat a little bit, or, interested in your ideas as much as you're willing to listen back and forth. So she's got things to talk about, and so I can listen. So
well, you're together now, so it must be a reason you're hanging out with each other.
Well, she likes old coins, and I do hunt down old coins, and I think that was one of the first things we started talking about. And I might have had something in my pocket or something.
She's got money. She's like, oh, I can poison him and keep all.
Yeah. I mean, that would put me out of my misery. At least it wouldn't be that miserable. That would be a little, yeah. I think they call that euthanasia in some places. But
Guys,
yeah.
I'm going to interject here. I got to dip out now because I have another thing I have to do here in a couple more hours, and I just want to chill out. So,
Well, I just wanted to catch everybody else up on my less than date of what they could pick on me about.
yeah,
And
do you mind if I ask you a tricky question?
which one of us?
You, Retro. Do you love her?
I mean, I'm already a mono kind of guy, so she has my focus. So I look at love in several degrees. So it's just like she has my focus, she has my attention. I would do anything for her at this moment, at this phase, but that anything is a variable that would change with real secure love, if you know what I'm saying. Like,
I do.
this is I'm into her, so it's just like that. So I have a major crush that, she is sufficing.
Sufficing? Don't tell her that.
Yeah, she's available for my crushing. There you go.
I like to look at it in caveman, very simple, dumb
Yeah, I mean, I
terms.
don't know how to date. I'm just being honest. I've only been in a lot of long-term relationships, and I don't want to get into body counts and stuff. But I've had some short ones, but the short ones are fewer and far between than the long-term relationships. So I'm usually in a average 2 to 10 year relationship, and then I get out and get some freedom. And sometimes I really want freedom, but then that period is over in 4 to 6 months. And other times I never wanted freedom to begin with. I just wanted to be, feel better, just whatever that means, like maybe there's another reason I didn't feel, like, yeah, if someone's like totally not right for you, yeah, you just got to get out of there. When you don't feel good about yourself, and they're not providing any kind of esteem any way whatsoever of, reciprocity, symbiosis, trying it all to put any effort in the relationship. It wears out the other person if they're supposed to, be the floor mat, the rug, and the dirt of everything, and then get walked on. It just happens.
I get it. I wish you luck.
Oh, I don't need luck. I got the universe and the monsters and the gods and all that will guide me the right way. The angels and the fairies or whatever. It's all good. Whatever's meant to happen is what happens. Okay. So emotions are something that happens within people, but it's just like the weather. They will be over. They come and they go. So it's just, I look at things as forecasts and not really try to think of them as as human. It's just a forecast of our own weather. It's just what, and it's not as personal, right? I shouldn't take it as personal. And it's just like her weather is fresher out of a breakup than mine, so I'm waiting hers out. That's all. And I'm fine with that. And it's just like, as long as I've already told myself I'm fine with that, and I've bumped into other women and I felt no need to get with them or no need to try. So I felt like that's a good sign that I can hold out, because nothing's happening right now, and nothing was happening for me really since last May. So there's no reason I should be rushing away from her just because she's not already in bed with me. So there you go. And she'll introduce me to whoever, Yeah, so it's just like, people have friends. Maybe. So it's like, maybe I'm right for someone she knows, and she's like, my friend wants to meet you. We've all had that happen, right? At some point where someone's like, my friend wants to meet you, and it's like, that ends up the person we're dating. There's this girl that, like, I met her in a group of people, and I only noticed blondes when I was younger, so I had noticed the blonde girl, and I definitely wanted to hang out with her again. And when I went to go hang out with them, they're like, this other girl, and her name was Jess or whatever, and she was a fox. She was really cute, and I barely noticed her the first time we were hanging. That she was hanging out as teenagers in the group of little punk rock concert kids we were going with. And I was like, hey, this girl is extra cute. And she ended up the one that liked me, was the girl I barely noticed the first night because it was just dark and she had dark hair. She didn't stand out. Maybe she had a big coat on or something, but she just did not get my attention. She definitely got my attention after another time.
Speaking of
Yeah.
which, I forgot to say goodbye to Joanie. Adios, Joanie. Enjoy the
I
rest of
mean,
the
I
day.
don't know if
Thanks
she's
for joining us.
temporarily off or off. And now is this what after hours? This is the men's show. This is testosterone reboot 101. We're gonna shave our
Well, yeah.
mullets down, let our horns grow.
Well, yeah. Did you ask her whether she was vaccinated against
So,
against
oh. To me,
the
that's
mini
none of my
monster?
business. If she wants to
Really?
tell me, I figured she's not, but that's just me guessing. She seems kind of intelligent, but maybe afraid to, use it all the time. So maybe she hid that she didn't get, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't want to question her. She'll probably think I'm like, did you get a Like, she'll probably think I want an answer. I don't want an answer. I don't care. I would like her no matter what she did with the vaccine if she wanted to hang out. That don't matter. I prefer people have not taken them, but because I think it might mess up their future offspring.
See, I see it as an intelligence test more so than anything else. It's an indication of her soul and her spirit and how, how she thinks in a way that I find very important in a relationship. Like, not to overanalyze it, but for me, it's less of a health issue than a reflection of how she thinks. But different strokes for different folks. I'm not going to tell anybody how to think. I think the same way about
Yeah, me
geography
neither.
too,
About politics
and the
either, because
globe.
you could be wrong at either extreme. So you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So at
yeah.
further, because that's who
I,
meets at these rallies is the extremists. They bump into each other. So it's just like as long as you don't go all the way either side, and that's what they try to do. Once you start, that's how algorithm works. Soon as one of us likes one Alex Jones clip or whatever, it starts feeding us all this stuff. You know what I'm saying. I watch the mud flood stuff too. I watch John Levi or whatever his name is. He just has a slow voice and he like, look at this building. Do y'all see it? I enjoyed like just watching it kind of as background, to be honest with you. And then looking at the architecture. I don't really believe in the mud flood, but I believe things happen in different places on Earth that were landslides and mud fills and they did build over stuff. That's what they basically did when the city got older. They didn't always tear it down. They just built on top, built on top, built on top. So it's not always a mud flood. It's a layered civilization. And they still exist. Even in America, there's layers of like, I don't know if it's Portland or something like that, Seattle or something. One of them has layers, and there's other cities in America that is built on layers. They didn't fix the plumbing, they didn't fix the ditches, they just brazed everything up because it was shit underneath. And that
actually,
created layers.
the way what you just said, I believe, goes to the heart of the purpose of the mud flood as a deception, in that what they're trying to conceal is the use of roadways in early installations of sewer systems. So historically, before there were sewer systems, people would toss out their trash and their waste in the road, and so the sewers were built on the roads, and the roads were then buried. So the pipes were submerged, and so all of the first level apartments were submerged as well in the
Yeah,
process.
that's in several
And then
places
they,
all over Earth, right? Of the where people have
yeah,
built stuff. This happens everywhere as they
yeah.
got more modern with their plumbing. Yeah, you're right.
Well, yes, but that's what they're trying to conceal with this mud flood thing, because eventually the sewer systems have to be upgraded, and so they dig them out and whatever. And that's being concealed, and I think it's related to the science fiction of contagious diseases. So historically, we're told about the Black Plague, and then this plague, and then that scamdemic, and then the Spanish flu, and the German measles, and then now the the Condid, and there's going to be something else. All of that was designed to hide the fact that overpopulation in the cities led to a contamination of their water supplies. And so rather than the king having to admit that his hardware and infrastructure was failing and that it was the fault of the government, it was all flipped around so that people believe, oh, there's a mini thing flying in the air, going from person to person. In essence, it's the fault of the people and not the fault of the state infrastructure degrading. And that's what was experienced throughout the whole world. And so I think it's all tied in together conveniently as one grand nonsensical science fiction deception to hide the failings of the state. But I really dig the looking at the old pictures of old architecture, like the way, like you said, John Levi and those other guys do it. It's great entertainment. I find it exciting learning about all the old architecture.
And Paul Cook, I don't really understand what he's talking about at all. Meaning he kind of goes this way and that way and doesn't really have a strong rhythm. Except he definitely says they had some kind of old kind of, cement or whatever. And a lot of places say that, and then it is proven. But there's ones that aren't cement. That's Baalbek is not cement. They have where it's being cut out. They have the quarry is open. Same thing with Easter Island is not cement. So he tries to explain everything as cement. And then, they poured it into place, into shape, but it looked like the rock. They had a special cement that turned into granite or whatever. So, I mean, there is rocks or whatever you call it. They're mixed forms of rocks. So it's just like polygeodes or whatever. And they do mix them and stuff. Yeah, geopolymer. There you go. And then they mix them up, and they have worked in places. Modern places use them, obviously. And then they used them in the ancient past a little bit, but their recipes, they obviously lost over time, just like the ones for glass and certain armor that the Romans had or something. They had a special armor that's lost that was really powerful, and then they had the glass that was it was either changing color or would do something in the heat or something, and that no one can reproduce this special glass that the Romans have. Like they knew about it. You can probably find it, but for some reason they don't understand the chemical properties of how to recreate some of this stuff. So one little ingredient wrong or mixture, and then you just don't have it. So there's been all kinds of stuff lost through history of things we just lost the recipe for, or they could condemned them from one religion or another taking over and saying that was too closely related to the religion. Whether it was colored glass, whether it was a cross, whether it was a symbol, whether it was a shape of a church, and all those things get changed. Just like the, Constantinople and, the giant cathedral there is now a mosque, and it's just like it works that way all over the place. So they can reconstitute anything. The Cathedral of Notre Dame was actually a temple to, I think, Jupiter or something for the Romans. So most of the old churches, the older you get, are built on pagan temples because they were already there. They just changed the sign on the door. There's one in Mexico that's connected to like an underground temple or tunnels or something. That's one of the biggest cathedrals near Mexico City or something, one of the oldest ones. It's like built on some kind of giant, Aztec underground temple or something as part of the church foundation. And then the Viking churches are all like scaled like dragons and snakes. You've seen that, right? The further you go north with those churches, they have, the roofs on them are all like they're scales. So it's just like Was this snake worship, dragon worship, fish worship? What's the scales about that they always have? The roofs of the buildings are all scaly. And these are the very old, supposedly first Christian churches of the Norse people, all have scaly roofs. It looks like the skin of a serpent to me. But maybe it's a fish.
See, I expect the Roman Empire just absorbed and integrated the way they did in the past. Like integrating Christianity was just something that they did. They integrated all religions.
Yeah, I mean, that's the founding fathers of the United States. They recreated a Roman Republic with some democracy to it. The founding fathers here. That was what the whole Masonic stuff was about, basically. They recreated Rome here. Richmond, Virginia was another, capital Rome, built on the 7 hills. They put the pillared buildings up there, if anybody's ever seen them. And they got the ancient old Egyptian building built by the Freemasons there, which is the center of the hub of the design for the old America, the original OG one that these Illuminati forehead eyeball dudes that were all into the Enochian magic in the 1600s came over here and worked it out by the late 1700s and started building their Enochian temples all over. Pretty badass, because I guess they weren't allowed to do that in Europe.
Well, I see it differently. I see it as an expansion of the Roman Empire. Like, I don't see the Roman Empire as having fallen. It's just sort of transformed, moved from here to there to Amsterdam.
Yeah, that's what my videos have been about recently.
The city of London.
Yeah, all the craters and the things on the moon and these things we discover on all these planets. Like, look at the moon and then go Google what the craters are named. It's all Latin. It's all after Roman scholars. So it's just like all this stuff is still being named after Rome, and everything you see in Latin is in honor of old Rome. So it's just like in pluribus unum, the stuff on our money, order de secloro. No one speaks in Latin, y'all. This is Rome. This is Rome. Latin has been a dead language for 1,000 years. This is Rome, because they didn't want the people reading the Bible until it was translated. Because the Bible wasn't even written in Hebrew, it was written in Latin. The Bible we know of today is a, Latin language. It's the Romans. So our Bible came from Rome. Our moon came from Rome. What else came from Rome? Our leadership, their design came from Rome. The buildings, the architecture of the American capitals came from Rome. The courthouses, the design for those in the American capitals, the federal judge buildings and Congress and stuff, all that came from Rome. The architecture.
Metallurgy.
The way they make the bus.
I think metallurgy was preserved through Rome and spread out by the Roman Empire.
Yeah, Rome's invented like the powerlifting cranes. They invented like how to use actual real cavalry, and they long range battle. They invented, like, if you can name it today and it's not toast, they probably invented it. So it's like, and they were high the whole time. If people don't know, they were high on their honey, and they're all being poisoned because their sweeteners all had lead in them. So it's just like the Roman people loved their sweets and they loved their honey, and a lot of the kinds they had were poisonous enough that it was shortening their lives from the lead contents in their sweeteners. And because they had lead in their pipes too, they didn't know what they shouldn't use lead pipes back then and all that stuff, just like the Americans back in the day. So it's just like the whole thing with lead, and this metal bends easy, so we can build all our little cups and saucers and things we can hammer real easy, cheaper than gold. That's the lead, but it was poisoning, the sweeteners of the Roman citizenship. Unknowingly, it wasn't their leaders were trying to poison. They were all poisoned. They all had lead in their sugars.
Yeah, we
just
got
like
our
fun history.
politics from Rome too.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like you said, it
Vic
never went
mentioned
down.
something. No,
It adapted to East and West
Vic.
powers. I mean, the Russian is the
Well,
Eastern
what we
Church.
have now, yeah, the schism from what 1,000 years ago is something that the Roman or the Western world doesn't really share as common knowledge. But same in that we've got a figurehead who country and tells everybody what to do, and we're supposed to believe and obey the one guy, and he's got a few underlings. But in essence, what was happening in ancient Rome is that the emperor was at the mercy of the underlings. The emperor was either blackmailed or threatened by the Praetorian class. And that's what we have now. We've got some character who gets center stage, and there's faceless, nameless people who pull strings and pose threats and provocations. I want to believe that the King of England is isn't in control, because then he wouldn't be responsible for everything. But we'll see. We'll see. Vic puts up something about the Egyptians doing brain surgery. I want to expand on this and share something that I learned. Now, what they would do is they would spike people in the nose. Like, we were told that they would stick things in there and do brain surgery, but in actual fact, they would stick things in people's noses to create brain damage, with the intention of the survivors being more docile slaves and less rebellious. So rather than creating brain damage with alcohol or whatever, if they had captured slaves or captured soldiers before putting them into slavery, they had to undergo brain surgery and be lucky to survive, if you know, if you want to call that luck. Creating docile slaves. Again, that's just theory. Seems to make sense with what's happening
Your audio
now.
is going out a little bit.
Oh, wait. There we go. Oh, gee, I'm hitting the wrong buttons.
Either
There we go.
my connection's
Did
bad
anyone
or
watch Pam Bondi's testimony before Congress? Is it? Okay. I didn't
I'm
watch
losing
Pam
the stream or
Bondi's
it's like weak on my
testimony
side.
before Congress.
I didn't watch it. I
I
think it's
don't
just
know
for the
what her
internet.
job is. I don't know what the Attorney General does. I try to
She
pay
just
attention to
files
American
warrants for the
politics,
Justice
and whenever the
Department.
Orange Man does make
She files
speeches,
warrants for the
I find them
Justice
kind of
Department.
interesting here and there. There's one from a couple weeks ago where they legalized herb or weed for medicinal use. Pardon? Is my voice coming out? Can am I can I hear it? Okay. Yeah, I don't know. You know what, Lance? Lance, if you want to join the stream and oh dear, did my connection fail? Oh no, not again. Oh man, did the connection fail? Did the my StreamYard says there's a bad connection. Oh, is it back? I don't know. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I got a message that said there's a problem with the connection. Okay, Paul, what's this? Starts at 107. Let's see. Maybe I can play that video. Oh, no, I don't know. I can't figure out how to click that back. Oh, here it is. Okay, she basically answered no questions about epi, even with the victims in the room. And she was screaming at questioners. All right, I gotta watch that. I gotta watch that. That sounds funny. There's no audio? Oh, it's good now. Okay, cool. All right. Frank got called away. It's something to watch? Okay, I gotta figure out how to play it. Well, see, here's the thing. What were the questions that she was asking? Or that they were asking her? I gotta find this, figure out how to play this video. Let's see. Oh my. Clicking away. Let's see. What can we do? Get this. I'm gonna try to figure out how to play that. Oh man. Oh, here. Okay. Hold on. Thanks for being patient with me, guys. Trying to figure out how to get that. There it is. Okay. See if I can share this. How do you do it? Bondi implodes. There we go. Let's see. Where is it? Wait. Well, this ain't her. Name them all. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm just going to state my opinion on all this. See, as long as people are looking to name all these people in the files or whatever, they're missing the point. All these people who knew Epstein were working for somebody else. Nobody ever asks, okay, so Epstein was blackmailing some politician with dirty stuff. Okay, what did the politician do? Why were these, what did anybody need from these politicians? Those questions aren't being asked. And who needed them? Because Epstein himself was just a middleman. So the nameless people who hired Epstein to go out and blackmail these politicians are never mentioned. And these are the connections that need to be made by the police forces. Here I am, anarchist justifying the, the puppets of the state. But ultimately, you know, naming all these people in the Epstein files means nothing because many of them just knew him, and it doesn't really mean anything, and none of that stuff in those files are evidence. But what matters is, why did anybody need to blackmail any particular politician or character? What service was rendered in exchange for all the nastiness that was provided at the parties? Like, how did these people need to vote? You know, like, none of that's discussed. We probably never will know. We won't know who paid all these people. And that's what they're trying to track down. It's all a great big intelligence operation. Here we go. Pam Bondi said something. Pam Bondi was the one who said the files are on my desk last year. She's 100% involved in the cover-up. Okay, yeah. She had a stack of files on her desk, and she never had a chance to read every single one of them. Maybe a few on the top, and these files were in possession of the Democrats for what, nearly a decade before Pam Bondi got them. And these are just notes. She doesn't know what's in them. Half of them may not mean anything, and half of them may be falsified. So to release them all out wouldn't make sense. When Pam Bondi, rather than saying Pam Bondi is involved in a cover-up, why not presume that Pam Bondi is involved in using these files to cut deals or to blackmail the bad guys? Because if she were to release all the names and release everything and publish everything, well, the law enforcement agents can't use them to secure deals, and they can't use them to get people to talk and reveal stuff that's not in these files. But I mean, I'm willing to bet if you go up to any random police officer or police detective and tell them about, or ask them what would be in files, they would tell you that it's probably a disorderly mess that the general public could not possibly understand. Like, that's what I would expect. I don't think they're covering anything up. I think they're using it to blackmail the bad guys. But I could be wrong. Maybe Pam Bondi is a bad guy. I don't know. But I don't know. It all seems to make sense to me. How they're not releasing anything or whatever, because most of it isn't proof. Yeah, that's the other thing. Epstein is just one of many. Like, there's tons and tons of other Epsteins out there. His business model was not unique. Well, I better wrap this up. Thanks a lot for joining me. Thanks a lot, Joanie, for joining me at the start. I really enjoyed discussing the developmental stuff leading into parenting, because to me, it all comes down to parenting. That's what makes or breaks this world. Starting the convid, yeah. See, that's the thing. The releasing all the Epstein files would be too much information for most people. Most people can't handle it. And if there is a connection between the convid and the Epstein files and all his friends and neighbors, nobody would accept it. We'd have too many normies going crazy. There's too many people who believe the convid to be ready to hear that Epstein was in on faking it. You see, they have a hard enough time accepting what little has been released about Epstein and his wheeling and dealing and his nastiness. revealing that Convid was a con with Epstein's proof or whatever is the silver bullet, in my opinion. I'd like them to hold on to that one as a last resort. Whitney Webb, I don't know. One nation under blackmail. Yeah, we're all under. Yeah, that's what rules the world. Paul, that due dissonance are definitely at least useful idiots that I can't understand. And that gay clown has been sleeping with another well-known. Chill had him on his show, calls him the Royals plumber. Oh yeah. See, that's the thing. I fear the plan is to take down the royal family, but I don't really think highly of Charles. I want to believe he's a good guy who's being held hostage, but I'm convinced that William is a good guy. And I want my kids to grow up in a world where William is king. But law enforcement are obviously involved. Well, yeah. I don't know. I'm looking forward to the rest of the show. Adios, guys. Sue leaving. Trump surrounded himself with his biggest critics, gave them jobs, and now they're caught being his bitch. Yeah. Well, I better tune out. I got stuff to do as well. Thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in and enjoying the show. Look forward to trying it again. I'm glad I'm able to get the names up with the cartoony avatars. Wait. History will never repeat itself if AI takes over. Yeah, actually, that's right. All of her stories will be in stagnation. There won't be any future or past. Yeah, I don't know if AI is going to take over. I think AI is kind of like a .com bubble. It's a premise to lead people to buy stocks in companies that are going to go bust, and they'll take the money like a Ponzi scheme and fool a bunch of people who bought tickets to the next flight to the Mars or something that never happened. All right, thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in. I'm gonna tune out now. Adios. We'll catch you. Keep your feet on the floor and keep reaching for the stars. Video de conclusion. Nope.